The rain hammered against the taxi window like 1,000 tiny fists, each drop racing down the glass in crooked rivulets that blurred the neon lights of downtown into watercolor streaks. I pressed my forehead against the cool surface, watching the city I'd fled 3 years ago rush past in a kaleidoscope of memory and regret. "First time in Seattle?" the driver asked, his eyes finding mine in the rearview mirror. I managed a weak smile. "No coming back." He nodded, sensing the weight in those two words, and mercifully let silence fill the rest of the journey. The meter ticked upward as we crawled through evening traffic, past Pike Place Market where I'd once bought wildflowers for a man who'd promised me forever, past the coffee shop where we'd spent lazy Sunday mornings debating everything and nothing, past the life I'd abandoned when forever turned out to have an expiration date. The Emerald Grand Hotel rose before us like a glass and steel monument to modern luxury, its 40 stories piercing the storm clouds. I'd chosen it specifically because it was new, built after I'd left, a place with no memories embedded in its walls. Tonight, I needed somewhere that didn't know my name or my history. "That'll be $43.50, the driver said as we pulled under the covered entrance. I handed him 3 20s, "Keep it." A doorman in a pristine forest green uniform appeared with an umbrella before I could fully exit the cab, his smile professional and warm. "Welcome to the Emerald Grand. Let me help with your luggage." "Just the one bag?" I said, shouldering my weathered leather duffel. 3 years of running had taught me to travel light. Everything I owned fit in one bag now. It was either liberating or devastating, depending on the hour. The automatic doors whispered open, and I stepped from the chaos of the storm into a lobby that could only be described as breathtaking. A massive chandelier hung from the vaulted ceiling like a frozen waterfall of crystal and light. The floor was polished marble, veined with gold that caught and threw the light in 1,000 directions. To my left, a fireplace large enough to stand in crackled with real flames, surrounded by velvet chairs in deep jewel tones. To my right, a bar with a living wall of ferns and moss behind the bottles of top-shelf liquor. But it was the man behind the concierge desk who made me forget to breathe. He stood as I approached, and the movement was so fluid, so graceful that it seemed choreographed. Tall, maybe 6'2", with dark hair swept back from a face that belonged on a movie screen or a Renaissance painting. His eyes were the color of aged whiskey, flecked with gold, and when they met mine, I felt the impact physically, like something vital had shifted in my chest. "Good evening, sir. Welcome to the Emerald Grand." His voice was rich and warm, with the slightest hint of an accent I couldn't quite place. European, maybe, French or Italian. "I'm Adrian, the evening concierge. How may I make your stay exceptional?" I realized I was starring and forced myself to focus on the practical matter of checking in. "I have a reservation, Mason Cole." His fingers moved across the keyboard with practiced efficiency, but his eyes kept returning to my face as if he were reading a story written there. "Ah yes, Mr. Cole, we have you in one of our deluxe suites on the 32nd floor. You'll have a wonderful view of the Sound, assuming the rain lets up." A small smile played at the corners of his mouth. "Though there's something beautiful about a storm, don't you think? All that raw power and emotion." "I suppose," I said, suddenly very aware of how I must look. My jacket was damp despite the doorman's umbrella, my hair probably a mess, my eyes undoubtedly showing the exhaustion of a red-eye flight followed by 3 hours of sitting in the airport, working up the courage to actually take that cab into the city. "How long will you be staying with us?" The question felt loaded with meaning it shouldn't have. "I'm not sure yet, a week, maybe more. Is that a problem?" "Not at all." Adrian's smile deepened, creating a dimple in his left cheek that was absolutely unfair. "We're happy to have you for as long as you need. I'll make a note that your checkout date is flexible." He handed me a keycard in a small envelope. "You're all set, Mr. Cole. The elevators are just past the fireplace. Is there anything else I can assist you with this evening? Restaurant reservations, recommendations for things to do in the city." "I used to live here," I heard myself say, though I hadn't planned to share that information. Something about him invited confession. But that was a while ago. Things have probably changed. His expression shifted, became more thoughtful, more present. 3 years, he said softly, and I must have looked startled because he gestured to the screen. "Your last visit, according to our hotel loyalty program, you stayed at our sister property downtown 3 years ago." "Right," I said, though I had no memory of that hotel. That last trip was a blur of pain and paperwork and final goodbyes. "Well then," Adrian continued, his voice gentler now, "Seattle has changed, but perhaps not as much as you might think. The heart of it remains the same, and if you'd like a guide to reacquaint yourself with the city, I finish my shift at 11. He paused, seeming to realize he'd crossed some professional line, and a faint color rose in his cheeks. That is, I'd be happy to write down some suggestions for places that capture the true spirit of Seattle, away from the tourist traps. I should have said no. I should have thanked him politely, taken my key card, and disappeared into my room to order room service and avoid all human contact as I'd planned. Instead, I found myself saying, "I'd like that. The personal recommendations, I mean." His smile could have powered the city. "Excellent, I'll have something prepared for you. Enjoy your room, Mr. Cole, and please don't hesitate to call down if you need anything at all. Anything." I nodded, suddenly unable to form words, and made my way to the elevators on legs that felt unsteady. As I waited for the car to arrive, I couldn't resist glancing back. Adrian was helping an elderly couple, his attention fully on them, but just before the elevator doors closed, his eyes found mine across the lobby, and the look he gave me was full of promise and possibility and questions I wasn't sure I was ready to answer. The suite was exactly what I'd hoped for and nothing like what I needed. It was gorgeous, all clean lines and modern luxury, with floor-to-ceiling windows that showcased the storm raging over Elliott Bay. Lightning forked across the sky, illuminating the dark water and the islands beyond. In the distance, ferries plowed through the waves, their lights steady and sure despite the chaos around them. I dropped my bag by the door and went straight to the minibar, extracting a small bottle of vodka that cost probably $20 and would taste like regret in the morning. I poured it into a crystal glass and stood at the window, watching the city I'd loved and lost play out its drama below me. My phone buzzed, a text from my sister. "Did you make it? Are you okay? Call me when you can." I typed back, "Here, safe, we'll call tomorrow." Then I turned off the phone before she could press for more. The truth was, I wasn't okay. I hadn't been okay since the morning I'd woken up to find Marcus's side of the bed empty and cold, his closet half empty, and a note on the kitchen counter that said he was sorry but he couldn't do this anymore. Sorry, as if that word could fill the crater he'd left in the center of my life. I'd spent 3 years trying to outrun that moment. I'd moved to Portland, then San Francisco, then a stint in Austin that lasted 6 months before the heat and the loneliness drove me further east. I'd worked jobs I didn't care about, dated men I didn't love, and convinced myself that I was healing, moving forward, becoming whole again. But here's the thing about running. Eventually you have to stop. Eventually you have to turn around and face the thing you've been fleeing from. My father's funeral was that moment for me. Cancer, swift and merciless. I'd come home 2 weeks ago for the service, stood in the rain beside his grave, and realized I'd been so busy running from Marcus that I'd run from everything else too. My family, my friends, the city that had been my home for a decade before it became a crime scene of heartbreak. After the funeral, I'd gone back to Boston, where I'd been working as a freelance graphic designer for a firm that barely knew my name. I'd packed up my studio apartment in less than 2 hours, donated most of what I owned, and bought a one-way ticket back to Seattle. No plan, no job waiting, just an overwhelming need to stop running, to stand still. To figure out who Mason Cole was when he wasn't defined by who he'd lost. My phone buzzed again and I looked at it despite myself, but it wasn't my sister this time. It was a message from the hotel's internal communication system. "Mr. Cole, this is Adrian from the concierge desk. I hope you're settling in well. I've compiled some recommendations for you, a mix of old favorites that haven't changed and new places that I think capture the evolving spirit of Seattle. I'll have a printed list ready for you if you'd like to stop by the desk, or I can email it to you. Also, there's a wonderful little jazz bar about 2 blocks from the hotel called the Blue Note. They have live music every night and their old-fashioned is the best in the city, in case you're not in the mood to stay in this evening. Adrian." I read the message 3 times, trying to decode the subtext. Was this just exceptional customer service, or was there something more? The way he'd looked at me in the lobby had felt like something more. But maybe I was so starved for connection that I was reading meaning into basic politeness. I looked down at my rumpled clothes, my rain-damp jacket thrown over a chair. Then I looked at the minibar vodka in my hand, at the empty suite around me, at the storm beyond the windows. I could spend the evening here alone with my thoughts and my regrets, or I could take a chance on something different. Before I could talk myself out of it, I headed to the bathroom for a shower. 40 minutes later, I emerged from the hotel into a night that had softened from a downpour to a gentle mist. The city smelled like rain and possibility. I changed into dark jeans and a charcoal button-down, run some product through my hair, and tried to convince myself that the nervous energy thrumming through my veins was about facing Seattle again, not about the chance that I might see Adrian when I passed through the lobby. He was there, of course, laughing at something an older woman was saying as he wrote something on hotel stationery. The sound of his laughter was as rich as his voice, genuine and warm. He glanced up as if sensing my presence, and his smile transformed into something that made my heart forget its rhythm. "Mr. Cole," he said, excusing himself from the woman with the kind of charm that made her smile rather than feel dismissed. "You look wonderful heading out." "Taking your advice about the blue note," I said, trying for casual and probably landing somewhere near transparently hopeful. "Excellent choice." He reached behind the desk and produced a card. "Give this to Marcus at the door, he'll take care of you, tell him Adrian sent you." Marcus, the name hit me like a physical blow, and I must have flinched because Adrian's expression immediately shifted to concern. "Are you all right?" "Fine," I managed. "That's my ex's name, stupid coincidence." I expected polite sympathy, maybe a quick subject change. Instead, Adrian said quietly, "The one from 3 years ago." I met his eyes, saw no pity there, only understanding. "How did you?" "The way you looked when you said you used to live here, the flexibility in your checkout date, the fact that you're staying in a hotel in your own city." He shrugged, and the gesture was elegant on him like everything else. "I recognize the signs of someone trying to figure out if they can go home again, and for what it's worth, I think you can. Home isn't a place, Mr. Cole, it's a feeling. You can find that feeling again even if the geography has changed." "You should have been a therapist instead of a concierge," I said, aiming for light but landing closer to raw. "Who says I'm not both?" His smile returned, softer now. "We all wear many hats, now go, enjoy the music. And if you find the night is longer than you expected, the Blue Note serves an excellent late-night menu. Their chef makes a risotto that will change your life." I pocketed the card, our fingers brushing briefly in the exchange, and the contact sent electricity up my arm. "Thank you, Adrian." "My pleasure, Mason." The use of my first name felt intimate, deliberate. "Perhaps I'll see you when you return." "Your shift ends at 11, right?" "It does." I checked my watch, 8:47. "Then yes, I imagine you will." The walk to the Blue Note took me past the place that used to be our favorite Thai restaurant, now a trendy poke bowl place with a line out the door. I passed the comic book store where Marcus had dragged me every Wednesday for new releases, now a boutique selling overpriced candles and succulent plants. But I also passed the old theater that was still showing indie films, the bookstore that still stayed open until midnight, the corner where street musicians still set up despite the rain. The city had changed and stayed the same, just like Adrian had said. Maybe I could too. The Blue Note was tucked into a basement space, its entrance marked only by a small blue neon sign in the shape of a musical note. I descended rain-slicked stairs into a world of dim lighting, exposed brick, and the sound of a saxophone that wrapped around me like smoke. The space was intimate, maybe capacity for 60 people, and every seat was full. Small round tables clustered around a low stage where a quartet played something slow and melancholic and beautiful. A man built like a linebacker but dressed like he was attending the Grammys approached me with a questioning smile. "First time at the Blue Note?" "Yes," I said, producing Adrian's card. "He sent me." The man's smile deepened into genuine pleasure. "Any friend of Adrian's is family here. I'm Marcus." He extended a hand the size of a dinner plate and I shook it, reminding myself that not every Marcus was a ghost. "Come on, I've got a spot at the bar that just opened up, perfect view of the stage." He led me through the crowded room to a polished wood bar where a single stool sat empty, as if waiting. The bartender, a woman with purple hair and arms covered in intricate tattoos, set down a coaster without being asked. "What's your poison?" she asked. "Adrian mentioned you're old-fashioned." Her eyes lit up. "Adrian has excellent taste in drinks and people, one perfect old-fashioned coming up." As she built the drink with the precision of a surgeon, I let myself sink into the music. The saxophone was doing something extraordinary, taking a melody I recognized. Was that the way you look tonight? And deconstructing it, finding new meaning in the spaces between the familiar notes. The pianist joined in, their hands dancing across the keys like they were having a conversation in a language I didn't speak but somehow understood. The bartender set the drink in front of me and it was a work of art, amber liquid over a perfect sphere of ice, the orange peel twisted just so. I took a sip and understood why Adrian had recommended it. It was the platonic ideal of an old-fashioned, perfectly balanced between sweet and bitter, smooth and sharp. "Good?" the bartender asked, though my face must have already answered. "Transcendent." "That's what we're going for," she extended a hand. "I'm Sam, you're Adrian's friend." "Apparently so, though we just met tonight." She studied me with an intensity that felt like being read. Adrian doesn't usually send people here, not on their first night anyway. He must have seen something in you. Before I could figure out how to respond to that, the quartet finished their song to enthusiastic applause, and the saxophone player, a woman with silver hair and a dress that shimmered like water, stepped to the microphone. Thank you, we're going to take a short break, but we'll be back with more music that'll make you feel all the feelings in about 15 minutes. In the meantime, Sam makes a mean drink, so treat yourselves. The crowd murmured appreciation and conversations bloomed around me. I sipped my old-fashioned and tried not to think about the last time I'd been in a place like this. Marcus had loved jazz, said it was the only music complex enough to keep his mathematician's brain engaged. We'd spent countless nights in Portland's jazz clubs, his hand in mine, his head on my shoulder during the slow songs. "You okay?" Sam asked, and I realized I must have looked as sad as I felt. "Just remembering." She nodded like that explained everything, which maybe it did. That's what jazz is for. It holds space for whatever you're feeling. You don't have to be happy here, you just have to be honest. I like that philosophy. It's the Blue Note's unofficial motto. She refilled a bowl of mixed nuts in front of me. "So what brings you to Seattle, Adrian's friend?" I found myself telling her the abbreviated version, the 3 years of running, my father's death, the decision to come home and figure out who I was now. She listened without interruption, occasionally nodding. Her hands busy with building drinks for the steady stream of customers, but her attention fully on me. "That takes courage," she said when I finished. "Coming back to a place that hurt you, most people just keep running." I got tired of running. "Good, running's exhausting and you never actually get anywhere." She slid a small plate in front of me. "On the house, you need to eat something with that drink." It was a selection of cheese, fruit, and crackers artfully arranged. I hadn't realized I was hungry until I saw the food, and I couldn't remember when I'd last eaten. Breakfast on the plane, even that was fuzzy. "Thank you," I said, and meant it for more than just the food. The quartet returned, and the next set was different, faster, more energetic, the kind of music that made you want to move. Around me, people swayed in their seats, fingers tapping rhythms on tables, heads nodding along. I felt myself loosening, the old-fashioned and the music and Sam's easy acceptance all combining to soften the edges of my anxiety. Between songs, my phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "How's the Blue Note? Is the music as good as I promised, Adrian?" I smiled and typed back, "Better, how did you get my number?" "You filled out a contact form when you checked in. I promise I'm not usually this forward, but I have a feeling about you, Mason Cole. A feeling that maybe we're supposed to meet at this particular moment in our lives." My heart was doing complicated things in my chest. I wrote, "I have that feeling too, but I should warn you I'm kind of a mess right now." "Aren't we all? That's what makes us interesting. Enjoy the rest of your night. I'll be here when you get back." I pocketed the phone, my face hurting from smiling, and caught Sam watching me with a knowing look. "That Adrian?" she asked. "How did you?" "You have the same goofy expression everyone gets when they text him. He has that effect on people." "Everyone?" I tried to keep the disappointment from my voice. "No," she said, her tone kind. "Not everyone, but the people he chooses to let in. Adrian's complicated, beautiful and brilliant and damaged in all the interesting ways. He doesn't give out his number lightly." "You know him well." "He's my cousin and my best friend, and occasionally my worst enemy when we fight about literally anything because we're both stubborn as hell." She grinned. "But mostly he's the best person I know, so if he's reaching out to you like this it means something. Adrian doesn't waste time on people he doesn't believe in." The quartet launched into a cover of Feeling Good that was both reverent and revolutionary, and I let the music wash over me while I processed what Sam had said. Adrian believed in me. A man I'd met only hours ago, who knew almost nothing about me, had decided I was worth his time and attention. The thought was terrifying and thrilling in equal measure. I stayed for the entire next set, nursed a second old-fashioned that Sam made even stronger than the first, and found myself relaxing in a way I hadn't in years. Maybe it was the alcohol or the music or the acceptance I'd found in this underground room where nobody knew my history. Maybe it was the promise of Adrian waiting at the hotel. Whatever it was, I felt more like myself than I had in 1,000 days of running. When the band finished their final song, a slow, sultry version of Come Rain or Come Shine that felt almost prophetic, I thanked Sam, left a tip that would probably cover her rent, and made my way back into the Seattle night. The rain had stopped completely, leaving the streets washed clean and reflecting the neon and streetlights like a mirror. I walked slowly, in no rush despite knowing Adrian was waiting. I wanted to hold on to this feeling, this sense that maybe I could build something new here, that maybe coming back wasn't the mistake I'd feared it would be. The Emerald Grand appeared before me, its glass facade glowing warm and welcoming. Through the lobby windows, I could see Adrian at his desk, reading something on his computer. As if sensing me, he looked up, and even from this distance I could see his smile. I took a deep breath and walked inside. The lobby had quieted since I'd left. The elderly couple was gone, replaced by a group of young people in cocktail attire heading toward the bar, their laughter echoing off the marble floors. Adrian stood as I approached, and I noticed details I'd missed before in my exhaustion and surprise. The way his shirt fit perfectly across his shoulders, the silver watch at his wrist that looked like an heirloom, the small scar through his left eyebrow that gave his face character. "You came back," he said, and there was something vulnerable in his voice, like he'd genuinely worried I wouldn't. "You're still here." I said I would be. He glanced at his computer screen. "Actually, my shift ended 20 minutes ago, but I've been waiting." "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to keep you." "Mason," he said my name like it meant something. "I wanted to wait. I've been sitting here hoping you'd come back, trying to figure out what I'd say if you did." "And what did you decide?" He smiled, nervous now in a way that made him seem younger, more human. "I decided to tell you the truth, that I don't usually do this. I don't give out my number to guests. I don't wait past my shift. I don't let myself feel." He paused, searching for the right word. "Anything, for anyone, not anymore, but there was something about you when you walked in tonight, something in your eyes, like you were looking for the same thing I've been looking for." "Which is?" "A reason to stop being so fucking careful all the time." The admission hung between us, raw and honest. Around us, the lobby continued its late-night ballet, the night manager doing rounds, the bar serving drinks, the hotel breathing with the rhythm of people coming and going. But in our small circle by the concierge desk, time felt suspended. "I should tell you," I said slowly, "that I'm not looking for anything serious. I'm barely holding myself together. I came back to this city to figure out who I am without him, and I don't know how long that's going to take or what I'll be when I'm done." "Okay," Adrian said simply. "Okay. I'm not asking you to marry me, Mason. I'm asking if you want to get coffee or go for a walk or sit in my car while I show you the Seattle that tourists never see." He leaned against his desk and the pose was casual, but his eyes were intense. "I'm asking if you want to spend some time with someone who thinks you're interesting and wants to know your story, whatever that looks like, however long it lasts." I should have said no. I should have gone to my room, slept off the alcohol and the emotions, woken up clear-headed and remembered all the reasons this was a bad idea. Instead, I said, "Show me." His smile was incandescent. "Give me 5 minutes to close out my desk and grab my coat." I watched him move through his end-of-shift routine with the efficiency of long practice, locking drawers, logging out of systems, leaving notes for the next shift. He disappeared into a back room and emerged in a leather jacket that transformed him from polished professional to something edgier, more dangerous. He'd loosened his tie and rolled up his sleeves, and I could see tattoos peeking out from under his cuffs. "Ready?" he asked. "I don't even know where we're going." "That's the best part." We exited through a side door that led to the employee parking garage. Adrian's car was a vintage Volvo in forest green, well-maintained, but showing its age in the way that classic cars do. He opened my door first and I caught the scent of his cologne, something woody and complex. "A Volvo," I observed as he slid into the driver's seat, "Swedish safety and reliability." "My mother was Swedish," he said, starting the engine. "She always said life was dangerous enough without taking chances with bad engineering." Something flickered across his face, memory or pain or both. She was right, as it turned out, though not in the way she meant. He pulled out of the garage before I could ask what he meant by that, and soon we were driving through downtown Seattle, past Pike Place Market shuttered for the night, past the sculpture garden where enormous metal installations caught the streetlights, past the Space Needle standing sentinel over the city. "Tell me about the Blue Note," I said, wanting to hear him talk, to learn the cadence of his voice. "Sam told you she's my cousin." "She did. She also said you don't give out your number lightly." He laughed, and the sound filled the car's interior like music. "Sam talks too much, but she's not wrong. My family owns the Blue Note. Sam runs it day to day, but it's been in our family for 3 generations." My grandfather opened it in 1967. Back when Seattle's jazz scene was thriving. He was a saxophone player, traveled with some of the greats in his youth, settled here, and decided the city needed a place where people could feel something real. That's beautiful. He was a beautiful man, complicated like all the best people, but beautiful. Adrian turned onto a highway heading north and the city began to fall away behind us. He died 5 years ago and Sam took over operations. I help when I can, but the hotel keeps me pretty busy. How did you end up in hospitality? By accident, like most things worth doing. He glanced at me, then back at the road. I was studying architecture at the University of Washington, had a whole career planned out, was going to design buildings that would outlast me. Then my grandfather got sick and I took a semester off to help with the Blue Note. Realized I loved the people part more than the building part. I like making someone's day better. I like being the person who knows where to find the best croissant in the city at 3 a.m., or which museum has the quietest room for contemplation, or which walking trail will make you believe in God even if you didn't before. Sounds like you're exactly where you're supposed to be. Most days, his hands tightened briefly on the steering wheel. And you, what did you do before you started running? Graphic design, freelance mostly, corporate branding, website design, the occasional logo project. It paid the bills and let me be creative, which was all I needed. And now? Now I don't know. I brought my laptop and my tablet, thought maybe I'd try to pick up some projects while I'm here. But honestly, I haven't felt creative in 3 years. Every design I start feels hollow, like I'm going through the motions of being the person I used to be. Adrian was quiet for a moment, navigating an exit that took us toward the water. Maybe that's because you're trying to be who you were instead of discovering who you are. Creativity comes from authenticity. If you're performing a version of yourself that doesn't exist anymore, the work will feel false. When did you become so wise? Somewhere between heartbreak and healing, that's usually where wisdom lives. We drove in comfortable silence for a while and I watched the landscape change from urban to suburban to something wilder. Trees crowded the road, their branches creating tunnels of darkness between streetlights. The ocean appeared to our left, vast and black under the starless sky, and I could smell salt and seaweed through the vents. Finally, Adrian pulled into a small parking area overlooking a beach. We're here. Where's here? Discovery Park, specifically the North Beach area. It's technically closed at night, but nobody enforces it as long as you're quiet and don't cause trouble. He turned off the engine and looked at me. I come here when I need to remember that there's more to the world than what's in front of me, when I need perspective. We got out of the car and the night air was cold and clean, scented with brine and evergreen. Adrian led me down a path through the trees, using his phone's flashlight to illuminate the way until we emerged onto a rocky beach. The Puget Sound stretched before us, dark and restless, and across the water, the lights of islands and distant cities glimmered like fallen stars. This is incredible, I breathed. Wait, Adrian checked his watch, give it 30 seconds. We stood in silence, close enough that I could feel the heat of his body, and I counted the seconds, 28, 29, 30. The lighthouse beam swept across the water, brilliant white against the darkness, illuminating the waves and the driftwood scattered across the beach. It passed over us, and for a moment, Adrian's face was caught in the light, and I saw something there that matched what I felt, longing and hope and fear all tangled together. The West Point Lighthouse, Adrian said as darkness returned. Built in 1881, still operational, the beam sweeps every 8 seconds all night long every night, a constant in an inconstant world. You're a romantic, I said. Guilty. He picked up a piece of sea glass, smooth and frosted by the waves, and held it up to the next sweep of the lighthouse beam. It glowed green, almost otherworldly. I believe in beauty and meaning and the idea that we're all connected by invisible threads. I believe that some people are meant to meet, even if the timing is terrible and the circumstances are wrong. Is that what this is, meant to be? He turned to face me fully and the next sweep of light caught us both. I don't know yet, but I'd like to find out, wouldn't you? The question hung between us and I thought about all the reasons I should say no. I was broken. I was lost. I had no business starting anything with anyone until I'd figured out who I was alone. Every piece of conventional wisdom said to take time, heal completely, learn to love myself before trying to love someone else. But standing on that beach with the lighthouse beam painting us in intervals of light and shadow with the sound breathing its ancient rhythm beside us, with Adrian looking at me like I was something precious and rare. All that conventional wisdom felt like cowardice disguised as common sense. "Yes," I said, "I'd like to find out." He kissed me then, soft and careful, like I was something that might break. His hand came up to cup my jaw, his thumb brushing my cheekbone, and I tasted coffee and mint and possibility. The lighthouse swept over us, blessing us with its light, and I kissed him back with 3 years of loneliness and longing channeled into this one moment of connection. When we broke apart, both breathing hard, Adrian rested his forehead against mine. "I should tell you something," he said quietly. "I'm not just damaged in the interesting ways Sam mentioned. I'm actually kind of a disaster. I have trust issues and abandonment issues and a tendency to self-sabotage when things get too good because I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop." "Okay. Okay." I smiled against his lips. "Adrian, I literally spent 3 years running away from my problems. I'm in no position to judge anyone else's baggage. We can be disasters together." That's the most romantic thing anyone's ever said to me. We stayed on that beach for hours, sitting on driftwood logs while the lighthouse beam kept its faithful rhythm. Adrian told me about his family, his Swedish mother who died of cancer when he was 15, his French father who'd never quite figured out how to raise a son alone, his grandmother who'd taught him about beauty and resilience. I told him about Marcus, about the life we'd built and how quickly it had unraveled, about waking up one day to find myself alone and not knowing how that had happened. "Did you love him?" Adrian asked, and there was no jealousy in the question, only curiosity. "I thought I did, but looking back, I wonder if I loved who I thought he was or who I thought we could be together. Does that make sense?" Perfect sense. I did the same thing with my ex, spent 2 years in a relationship with the potential of us rather than the reality. He picked up a stone and skipped it across the water, and we watched it disappear into the darkness. His name was Daniel. He was a lawyer, brilliant and ambitious, and I convinced myself that his ambition included me. Turned out his 5-year plan had room for a corner office, but not for a concierge with a part-time jazz bar side hustle. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. It taught me something important. That I'd rather be alone than be with someone who sees me as a supporting character in their story instead of the co-author of ours." The lighthouse swept over us again, and I reached for his hand, lacing our fingers together. "For what it's worth, you seem like a leading man to me." Yeah, his smile was visible even in the darkness between the lighthouse beams. "You're not so bad yourself, Mason Cole." We sat in comfortable silence, watching the water and the lights and the stars that were beginning to emerge as the clouds cleared. I felt something loosening in my chest, some knot of tension I'd been carrying for so long that I'd forgotten it was there. Maybe it was the ocean air or the rhythm of the lighthouse or the warmth of Adrian's hand in mine. Maybe it was just the relief of being honest with someone, of not having to pretend I was okay when I wasn't. "Can I ask you something?" Adrian said eventually. "Anything." "Why now? After 3 years, why come back now? I mean, I know about your father and I'm sorry for your loss, but there's something else, isn't there? Something that made you decide this was the moment to stop running." I thought about how to answer, watching the lighthouse beam make its faithful circuit. A week after the funeral, I was walking to work in Boston. It was one of those perfect fall mornings, you know. Crisp air, leaves changing color, that golden light that makes everything look like a painting. And I passed a coffee shop with tables outside, and there was a couple sitting there just existing together. They weren't doing anything special, reading the paper, drinking coffee, occasionally showing each other something on their phones. But they had this ease, this comfort with each other, like they'd found their person and everything else was just details. Adrian squeezed my hand, encouraging me to continue. And I realized I didn't just want that, I needed it. Not with Marcus, that ship has sailed and sunk and been reclaimed by the ocean. But I needed to believe I could have that again someday. And I couldn't believe it while I was still running, while I was still letting that one failed relationship define every choice I made. So I decided to come back to where it all fell apart and see if I could put myself back together. That's brave. It's terrifying. Those are often the same thing. The lighthouse beam caught the side of Adrian's face, illuminating the strong line of his jaw, the curve of his lips. "And for what it's worth, I think you're going to find what you're looking for, maybe not exactly what you expect, but something real." Is that your concierge wisdom or your personal opinion? Both. He stood, pulling me up with him. "Come on, there's one more place I want to show you before we head back." We walked further down the beach, our shoes crunching on the mix of sand and small stones. The lighthouse beam was our only consistent light, sweeping over us every 8 seconds like a metronome marking time. Adrian led me to a massive piece of driftwood, a tree trunk that must have been ancient when it fell, now bleached silver by sun and salt and time. "This is my thinking spot," he said, settling onto the log and patting the space beside him. "When Sam and I fight, or when work gets overwhelming, or when I'm questioning every decision I've ever made, I come here and sit on this exact log and watch the water until I remember that most of what we worry about is temporary, but the ocean is forever." I sat beside him close enough that our shoulders touched. "Does it work?" "Usually, though sometimes I just end up cold and still worried, but at least I'm cold and worried somewhere beautiful." I laughed, and it felt good, felt like something loosening even further in my chest. "You have a very practical approach to existential crisis." "Years of practice?" He was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke again, his voice was more serious. "Can I tell you something I haven't told many people?" "Of course." "My mother didn't just die of cancer. She had ovarian cancer, stage 4 by the time they found it. She fought for 18 months, and near the end she made me promise her something." He swallowed hard, and I could see him struggling with the memory. "She made me promise that I wouldn't let fear keep me from living, that I wouldn't let her death make me afraid of loving people, of taking chances, of being vulnerable. She said life was too short and too precious to spend it protecting yourself from pain, because pain is inevitable but joy is optional." She sounds like she was amazing. She was, and for a long time after she died I couldn't keep that promise. I was so angry at the universe for taking her, so scared of losing anyone else that I kept everyone at arm's length. I dated but never seriously. I made friends but never close ones. I worked and went through the motions and told myself I was fine. "What changed?" "Daniel, actually, he broke through all my defenses, made me believe it was safe to love again. And then he left and I was right back where I started, convinced that my mother's advice was naive, that opening yourself up to people just meant giving them the power to destroy you." The lighthouse beam swept over us, and I saw tears on Adrian's cheeks catching the light. "But then," he continued, "my grandmother, my mother's mother, came to visit about a year ago. She's in her 80s now, sharp as ever, and she took one look at me and said, 'You're not keeping your promise.' We had this long conversation where she reminded me that my mother didn't ask me to avoid pain. She asked me to choose joy despite the pain, to live fully and love openly even though everything is temporary and everyone eventually leaves. That's beautiful and brutal. That's life." He turned to face me, and in the intermittent light his face was so open, so honest, it made my heart ache. "So when you walked into that lobby tonight looking lost and hurt and still somehow hopeful, I felt something I haven't felt in a long time. Recognition, like looking in a mirror and seeing someone who understands what it's like to be broken but trying. And I thought maybe this is it. Maybe this is the universe giving me another chance to keep my promise to my mother." I didn't know what to say to that, so I did the only thing that felt right. I kissed him again, deeper this time, with more certainty. His arms came around me, pulling me closer, and I let myself sink into the feeling of being held, being wanted, being seen for exactly who I was, broken pieces and all. When we finally pulled apart, both of us shivering from the cold and the emotion, Adrian smiled and said, "We should probably head back before we freeze to death. That would be a very dramatic first date, but not the kind of story I want to tell." "This is a date, isn't it?" I pretended to think about it. "I suppose midnight beach trips and deep emotional confessions do qualify, though I should warn you I'm pretty rusty at this. My last first date was 6 years ago." "Mine was 2 years ago and it was terrible, so you're probably in better shape than me." He stood and helped me up, and we walked back to the car hand in hand, the lighthouse continuing its faithful watch behind us. I woke to sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows of my hotel suite, and for a moment I couldn't remember where I was. Then it all came rushing back: Seattle, the hotel, Adrian, the lighthouse, that kiss that had felt like coming home and running away at the same time. I checked my phone, 9:47 a.m., and a text from Adrian sent at 6:30. "Good morning. I hope you slept well and don't regret last night. I don't. I'm working the day shift today, concierge desk, 7 a.m., 3 p.m. if you need anything, or want anything, or just want to see me. Eh." I smiled at the phone like an idiot, then immediately panicked about what to text back. Should I be casual, enthusiastic, play it cool? I'd forgotten how exhausting dating could be, all this reading between the lines and trying to strike the right tone. Finally, I settled on, "Good morning, no regrets. In fact, I'm already looking forward to our next midnight beach trip. See you later, M." His response was immediate. "Absolutely. I get off at 3. There's a place in Fremont I think you'd love. It involves a troll under a bridge and excellent tacos." Intriguing, it's a date. It's definitely a date. The emoji made me laugh. There was something endearing about this sophisticated, emotionally intelligent man using a simple smiley face like a teenager with their first crush. I ordered room service, eggs Benedict, and the strongest coffee they had, and took it out onto the small balcony attached to my suite. The storm had completely cleared, leaving Seattle sparkling under a blue sky that seemed impossibly bright after last night's gloom. The sound was calm, dotted with sailboats and ferries, and in the distance, Mount Rainier rose like a snow-covered ghost. My phone rang, my sister Emma. "You're alive," she said when I answered, her voice equal parts relieved and annoyed. I was starting to worry. "Sorry, I should have called yesterday, it was a long day." "How is it being back?" I thought about how to answer. Strange, familiar, and foreign at the same time. The city has changed, but not as much as I thought it would, or maybe I've changed and I'm seeing it differently now. "Have you thought about reaching out to any of your old friends?" "Not yet, I'm not ready for that." "What about Marcus, are you going to?" "No," the word came out sharper than I intended. "Sorry, no, I'm not going to reach out to Marcus, that's done, Emma, it's been done for 3 years. "Okay, okay." She was quiet for a moment then. "So what are you going to do? You can't just hide in a hotel room for a week." "I'm not hiding, I'm regrouping." I took a sip of coffee, watching a seagull ride the thermal currents below my balcony. "Actually, I met someone. Mason Cole, you've been there for less than 24 hours. I know, it's probably stupid. He works at the hotel, he's the concierge, and we just connected. We went to a jazz bar and then to the beach." And Emma, it felt like I could breathe for the first time in years. I could hear the concern in her voice when she spoke. "I'm happy you're meeting people, I really am, but maybe take it slow. You're in a vulnerable place right now, and the last thing you need is to jump into something before you're ready." "I know, and I'm trying to be smart about this, I really am, but there's something about him, he's been through his own stuff and he gets it. He's not asking me to be fixed or whole or anything other than exactly what I am right now. Which is a work in progress." Emma laughed and I could picture her shaking her head. "Okay, just be careful and call me if you need anything, even if it's just to talk. Promise." "Promise, love you." "Love you too, disaster boy." After we hung up, I showered and dressed, trying to decide what to do with my day. I could work, I had 3 logo projects in various stages of completion sitting in my inbox, but the thought of opening my laptop and staring at design software made my stomach twist. Emma was right that I'd been going through the motions for 3 years, creating work that was technically proficient but creatively dead. Maybe I needed more time before I could approach design with fresh eyes. Instead, I decided to walk. Seattle was a city made for walking, with neighborhoods that each had their own personality, hills that would make my legs burn, and views that made the burning worth it. I grabbed my jacket and headed down to the lobby. Adrian was at his desk helping a family with directions to the Space Needle. He looked different in daylight, still beautiful but more approachable somehow, the angles of his face softer in the natural light streaming through the lobby windows. He glanced up as I approached and his smile was immediate and genuine. "Mr. Cole," he said, his tone professional but his eyes warm, "how can I assist you today?" I played along. "I need recommendations for a walking tour, somewhere I haven't been or somewhere that's changed enough that it might as well be new." He pulled out a map of the city and spread it on his desk. The family had moved away and we had a moment of semi-privacy. "What's your fitness level? Some of our best walks involve significant hills." "I can handle hills." "Excellent." He traced a route on the map with his finger, and I tried not to focus on his hands, on the way his fingers moved with such confidence and grace. "I'd recommend starting at the Olympic Sculpture Park, that's about a 20-minute walk from here along the waterfront. Then head up through Belltown into Queen Anne. There's a street called Highland Drive that has some of the best views in the city. From there you can wind your way to Cary Park. It's a bit touristy, but the view is worth it. After that, down through Lower Queen Anne and back toward downtown." "How long is that?" 2 to 3 hours, depending on how often you stop to take pictures or contemplate the meaning of existence." "And if I wanted company?" I kept my voice low, aware that we were in public, that this was his workplace. Adrian's smile turned more private. "I wish I could, but I'm here until 3 and I have responsibilities." He hesitated, then leaned forward slightly. "Although, if you wanted to wait until I'm off, I could show you some places that aren't on any map." "The Troll and Tacos." Among other things, he straightened as another guest approached, his expression shifting back to professional. Enjoy your walk, Mr. Cole, and if you need anything at all, you know where to find me. I took the map and headed out, feeling his eyes on me as I crossed the lobby. The doorman, a different one from last night, younger with a friendly gap-toothed smile, held the door and wished me a good day. I thanked him and stepped out into the Seattle morning. The city felt different in daylight, less moody, more energetic. People were everywhere, commuters rushing to work, parents pushing strollers, tourists with cameras and coffee cups. The waterfront had been redeveloped since I'd left, with new restaurants and shops and a wider pedestrian pathway. I walked slowly, trying to match the memory of what had been with the reality of what was. The Olympic Sculpture Park was exactly as Adrian had described, a series of outdoor galleries filled with enormous sculptures that played with scale and perception. I spent longer there than I'd planned, sitting on a bench in front of a massive red metal eagle, watching people interact with the art. A little girl was trying to hug a steel tree that was 3 stories tall, her arms spread wide, her face full of joy at the impossibility of the task. It reminded me of what Adrian had said about his mother, about choosing joy despite knowing everything is temporary. That little girl knew she couldn't actually hug the tree, but she was trying anyway, finding delight in the attempt. I pulled out my phone and took a picture, not of the tree but of the girl, capturing that moment of pure, unself-conscious joy. Then I opened my design software for the first time in weeks and started sketching. I didn't have a specific project in mind, just the image of the girl and the tree and the feeling of wanting to hold onto something too big to hold. An hour passed without me noticing. When I finally looked up, my back was stiff and my hand was cramping, but I had something, a rough concept for a logo that played with the idea of reaching for the impossible. It wasn't finished, wasn't even close to good yet, but it was alive in a way my work hadn't been in years. I saved the file and continued my walk, feeling lighter than I had in months. The hills of Queen Anne were brutal, but Adrian had been right, they were worth it. Highland Drive lived up to its name, winding through a neighborhood of beautiful old houses with gardens that were still blooming despite the late season. At the top I found Cary Park, a small triangle of grass and viewpoint that offered a panoramic view of downtown Seattle, Elliott Bay, and the mountains beyond. It was crowded with tourists, all taking the same photo, the Space Needle in the foreground, the city spreading out below, Mount Rainier in the distance. I took my obligatory shot, then found a spot away from the crowd and just stood there, letting the view sink in. This had been my home. I'd lived here for 10 years, built a life here, fallen in love here. I'd walked these streets and ridden these buses and complained about the rain like every good Seattleite. And then I'd left it all behind, convinced that the city itself was poisoned by association, that I could never be happy here again. But standing there in Cary Park, watching the city breathe and move and continue on without me, I realized how arrogant that had been. Seattle didn't care about my heartbreak. It had its own story, its own rhythm, and millions of other people living their own joys and tragedies within its boundaries. My pain was valid, but it wasn't the defining characteristic of this place. I'd given Marcus that much power, not just over me, but over every street and building and memory, and that was my mistake, not the city's. I could reclaim this place. I could write new stories here that had nothing to do with him. I was already starting to, with Adrian and the Blue Note and this walk through neighborhoods that felt both familiar and new. My phone buzzed. Adrian again. How's the walk? Have you achieved existential enlightenment yet, or just sore calves? I smiled and typed back, both. Cary Park is as beautiful as advertised. And touristy. And touristy but beautiful, thank you for the recommendation. My pleasure, that's literally my job, but I'm glad you're enjoying it. 2 more hours until I'm free. Think you can stay occupied? I'll manage, see you at 3. I tucked my phone away and started the descent toward Lower Queen Anne, already anticipating what the afternoon might bring. Adrian was waiting for me in the lobby at 3:02. Changed out of his work clothes into dark jeans and a gray Henley that somehow made him look even more attractive than the professional attire had. He'd run his fingers through his hair, leaving it slightly mussed, and there was an energy about him that suggested he'd been watching the clock as eagerly as I had. Ready for an adventure? He asked. With trolls and tacos, absolutely. Then let's go. We took his Volvo north into Fremont, a neighborhood I'd always loved for its quirky, artistic vibe. As we drove, Adrian gave me a running commentary on what had changed. New breweries, a restaurant that had won national recognition, a bookstore that had burned down and been rebuilt even better than before. Seattle feels more grown up now, I observed, more polished. It is, tech money has changed a lot, some good, some not so good. More jobs, but also more traffic and higher rent and less of the weird, grungy character that made Seattle special. He turned onto a residential street lined with trees, but the bones are still here, you just have to know where to look. He parked near a bridge, and as we walked closer, I saw it. The Fremont Troll, a massive sculpture of a troll emerging from under the bridge, one hand clutching an actual Volkswagen Beetle. It was simultaneously creepy and delightful, exactly the kind of public art that made Seattle weird in the best way. I remember this guy, I said, walking around the sculpture. He was here before I left. 1990 actually, but they've done some restoration work since then and the area around him has been cleaned up. Adrian leaned against the bridge support, watching me explore. I like him because he's a reminder that not everything has to be serious or practical or make sense to be valuable. Sometimes art can just be a giant troll under a bridge and that's enough. Philosophy from a concrete monster. The best philosophy always comes from unexpected places. We took ridiculous selfies with the troll, making faces and striking poses, laughing like teenagers instead of two adults in their 30s dealing with complicated emotions. It felt good to be silly, to not take everything so seriously for a few minutes. From there, we walked to Fremont's main drag, past vintage stores and coffee shops and a statue of Lenin that Adrian explained had been brought over from Slovakia after the fall of communism. Only in Seattle, I said, and he grinned and replied, exactly. The taco place was a hole-in-wall with peeling paint and a handwritten menu, the kind of place you'd walk past without noticing if you didn't know better. Inside, it smelled like cilantro and lime and corn tortillas, and my mouth started watering immediately. Best al pastor in the city, Adrian said, trust me. We ordered at the counter tacos for both of us, plus horchata and chips with 3 kinds of salsa, and found a table by the window. The place was packed with people who clearly knew it was special, a mix of construction workers and artists and young professionals all united in their appreciation for perfect tacos. So, Adrian said once we'd settled in with our food, tell me about your day, did the walk help? It did, actually. I had a moment in the sculpture park where I started designing again, just rough sketches, nothing serious, but it felt like maybe I'm not completely broken after all. You were never broken, Mason. Hurt, yes. Struggling, definitely, but broken implies something beyond repair, and I don't believe that about anyone, least of all you. I took a bite of my taco to buy time because his words had hit something tender in me. How can you say that? You barely know me. I know enough. I know you came back to a city that hurt you because you wanted to heal instead of just survive. I know you spent your day walking and creating instead of hiding in your hotel room. I know you showed up last night even though you could have stayed safely alone. He leaned forward, his eyes intense. Those aren't the actions of a broken person, Mason. Those are the actions of someone who's brave enough to try again. Or stupid enough. Same thing usually. We ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes, and I had to admit Adrian was right about the tacos. They were transcendent. The perfect balance of meat and pineapple and cilantro with just enough heat to make you pay attention. Can I ask you something? I said finally. Last night you said you have trust issues and abandonment issues, but you seem so together. How do you do that? How do you deal with all that baggage and still show up for people? Adrian wiped his hands on a napkin, considering the question. Therapy helps, a lot of therapy. Sam's been a lifeline, having family who knows your whole story and loves you anyway. And honestly, practice. I screw up constantly. I push people away when they get too close, or I cling too tight and smother them. I read meanings into things that aren't there, and I miss red flags that are obvious. But I keep trying because the alternative, being alone forever, never taking any risks, feels like dying slowly. That's what I've been doing, dying slowly. I know, I recognize it because I've done it too. He reached across the table and took my hand, his thumb tracing circles on my palm. But you're here now, you're trying, that's what matters. What if I can't do this? The words tumbled out before I could stop them. What if I'm too damaged, too scared? What if I hurt you or you hurt me and I end up right back where I was 3 years ago? Then you'll survive it, just like you survived Marcus leaving, just like I survived Daniel, just like every person who's ever loved and lost and found the courage to try again. his grip on my hand tightened. Mason, I can't promise you this will work. I can't promise I won't disappoint you or that you won't disappoint me. All I can promise is that I'm here right now choosing this, choosing us, whatever that looks like. I felt tears prickling at my eyes and blinked them back. I'm choosing it too, even though it terrifies me. Good terror means you're alive. We finished our meal, the conversation flowing easier now that we'd acknowledged the elephant in the room. Adrian told me about his week difficult guests, a wedding that had required him to source 24 white doves on 6 hours' notice. Don't ask, he said, but his eyes were laughing. A proposal in the lobby that had involved a flash mob and nearly given the night manager a heart attack. I told him about my last 3 years in broad strokes. The jobs I'd taken and quit, the cities I'd tried to love, the slow realization that geography couldn't fix what was broken inside me. Do you think you'll stay? He asked as we walked back to his car, the sun starting its descent toward the Olympics. In Seattle, I mean. I don't know yet. I'm letting myself be uncertain about the future for the first time in my adult life. It's uncomfortable but also kind of freeing. I like that, uncertainty as freedom. He opened my car door, then went around to his side. Where to now? We could head back to the hotel, or I could show you more of the city, or we could just drive and see where we end up. I thought about the empty hotel suite waiting for me, clean and comfortable and impersonal. Then I thought about the way Adrian's eyes crinkled when he smiled, the way his voice wrapped around me like a warm blanket, the way being near him made me feel more present and alive than I had in years. Surprise me, I said. His smile was brilliant, my favorite words. We drove south, out of Fremont and through neighborhoods I half remembered. The traffic was picking up as rush hour approached, but Adrian navigated it with ease, one hand on the wheel and the other occasionally reaching over to rest on my knee, a casual intimacy that felt both new and ancient. Eventually, we pulled into a neighborhood of small craftsman houses, tree-lined streets and gardens that suggested people actually lived here and cared about their homes. Adrian parked in front of a pale blue bungalow with white trim and a front porch that held 2 rocking chairs and a surprising number of wind chimes. Where are we? I asked. My place, if that's okay, I thought. He paused, suddenly uncertain. I wanted to show you something, but if this is too fast or too much, we can go somewhere else. No, this is good, I want to see it. The inside of Adrian's house matched him perfectly, stylish but comfortable, full of interesting objects that told stories. Books everywhere overflowing from built-in shelves, stacked on tables, piled beside the couch. Art on every wall, a mix of prints and originals and what looked like family photos in vintage frames. A record player on a credenza, surrounded by milk crates of vinyl. Make yourself comfortable, Adrian said, toeing off his shoes by the door. Can I get you something to drink? I have wine, beer, coffee, tea, or I could make you the second best old-fashioned in Seattle. Second best. Sam's are still better than mine, I can admit when I'm beaten, he grinned, but mine are pretty damn good. I'll try one. While Adrian worked in the kitchen, I explored his living room. The books were organized by genre and then by color within each genre, which made me smile, a man who appreciated both order and beauty. The photos showed him at various ages, a young Adrian with a beautiful woman who must have been his mother, both of them laughing at something off camera. Teenage Adrian, all lanky limbs and uncertain smile, standing in front of what looked like the Eiffel Tower. Adult Adrian with his arm around Sam, both of them holding drinks and looking happy. That was Sam's 30th birthday, Adrian said, returning with 2 glasses. We closed down the Blue Note and had a private party that went until sunrise. I've never been so hungover in my life. You look happy. That was before Daniel, back when I still believed I could protect myself by not wanting anything too much. He handed me the drink and gestured to the couch. Sit, please. I sat and Adrian settled beside me, close but not touching, giving me space to choose how near I wanted him. I tasted the old-fashioned, it was, indeed, very good, and then I closed the distance between us, tucking myself against his side. His arm came around me immediately and I felt his exhale of relief. I'm glad you're here, he said quietly. Me too. We sat like that for a while, drinking our cocktails and listening to the wind chimes on the porch create their random music. The light coming through the windows turned golden, then amber, painting the room in warm tones. I felt myself relaxing in a way I hadn't since before Marcus left, like my body was finally remembering how to not be on high alert every moment. You said you wanted to show me something, I reminded him. Right. Adrian disentangled himself and went to a closet, returning with a large portfolio. I told you I studied architecture, but I never showed you what I actually designed. I don't show many people, it feels like showing them something too private, too revealing, but I want you to see. He opened the portfolio, and I found myself looking at architectural drawings that took my breath away. Buildings that played with light and shadow, that incorporated nature into their design, that seemed to grow organically from their surroundings rather than being imposed on them. Each one was accompanied by watercolor renderings that brought the blueprints to life. Adrian, these are incredible. They're just student work, none of them were ever built. That doesn't make them less beautiful. I studied a design for what looked like a library with reading nooks built into the walls and skylights that would flood the space with natural light. Why did you stop? He was quiet for a long moment, staring at his own work like he was seeing it for the first time. Because I was too scared to fail. I'd convinced myself that if I couldn't be the best, if I couldn't design buildings that would win awards and change the world, then there was no point in trying. So I talked myself into believing I loved the hospitality industry more, that being a concierge was more fulfilling than being an architect. But it's not. I don't know. He closed the portfolio carefully. Maybe it is. I do love what I do, helping people, making their experiences better, being the person who knows the answer to any question. But sometimes I wonder if I took the easy path, if I'm hiding from my real potential behind a concierge desk. I set down my drink and took both of his hands in mine. Adrian, there's nothing easy about what you do. You show up every day and make people's lives better, even in small ways. That matters. And these designs, I gestured to the portfolio, they're beautiful, and maybe someday you'll come back to architecture. But doing good work that makes you happy isn't settling, it's success. Thank you, his voice was rough with emotion. I needed to hear that. I'm just returning the favor. You've been telling me all day that I'm not broken. You're not. Neither are you. We kissed then, slow and deep, and it felt different from last night. Less frantic, more certain, like we were learning each other's rhythms, figuring out how we fit together. Adrian's hands found my hair, my jaw, my chest, mapping me gently. My hands slid under his shirt, feeling the warmth of his skin, the muscles of his back. When we broke apart, both breathing hard, Adrian rested his forehead against mine. I should tell you, I don't usually move this fast. I'm trying to be smart about this, to not rush, but you make it very difficult to think clearly. Same, I kissed him again, softer. What if we just see what happens? No expectations, no timelines, just this. Just this, he agreed, but maybe just this could also include you staying for dinner. I make a mean pasta carbonara. Is there anything you don't do well? Resist you, apparently. We made dinner together, working side by side in his small kitchen while music played from his phone, a mix of jazz and indie folk that somehow fit the moment perfectly. He cooked the pasta and bacon while I grated cheese and set the table, and it felt domestic in the best way, like we'd done this 1,000 times before instead of being in our second day of knowing each other. The carbonara was, indeed, excellent. We ate on his couch with plates balanced on our knees, occasionally feeding each other bites, laughing at nothing and everything. I told him about my sister, about growing up in Spokane, about my father who'd been distant but proud when I came out at 16. Adrian told me about learning to cook from his mother, about his grandmother who still lived in Sweden and sent him care packages full of candy and hand-knit sweaters, about the year he'd spent in Paris after his mother died, trying to find himself in his father's homeland. Did you, I asked, find yourself? Parts of myself. I found the part that could speak my father's language literally and figuratively. I found the part that loved walking along the Seine at dawn. I found the part that could sit in a cafe for hours with just a coffee and a notebook and feel completely content. He paused, twirling pasta on his fork. But I also found the part that missed home, that missed Seattle's rain and mountains and the way the light hits the water. I realized you can't run away from grief, it follows you everywhere. You have to turn around and make friends with it. Have you made friends with it? Some days, other days we're just coexisting, and that's okay too. After dinner, we moved to his couch with fresh drinks and fell into one of those conversations that meanders through a dozen topics. Music, movies, books we loved, places we wanted to travel. Whether pineapple belonged on pizza, we agreed to disagree. The light outside faded to darkness, and Adrian lit candles that flickered warm light across the room. I checked my phone at some point and was startled to see it was nearly midnight. I should probably go, I said, though I didn't move. You have to work tomorrow. Day off, actually, I work 4 10s, so I have 3 days off each week. He shifted to look at me. You could stay if you wanted, no pressure, no expectations. I have a guest room, or you could share my bed, just sleep, I mean, or you could go back to the hotel, whatever feels right. I thought about the empty hotel suite, about waking up alone in another generic room. Then I thought about waking up here in Adrian's space, surrounded by his books and his art and the evidence of a life fully lived. I'd like to stay, I said, if that's really okay. It's more than okay, it's what I was hoping you'd say. He showed me to his bathroom. Towels are in the cabinet, help yourself to anything you need, and lent me a t-shirt and pajama pants that were too long and smelled like him. When I emerged, he was making up the guest bed with fresh sheets, fluffing pillows with care. Unless, he said, pausing mid-fluff, you'd rather, I mean, my bed is bigger, more comfortable, and I promise to be a gentleman. I crossed to him and kissed him, slow and sweet. Your bed sounds perfect. We brushed our teeth side by side at his bathroom sink, and the domesticity of it made my chest feel tight. This is what I'd lost with Marcus, what I'd convinced myself I'd never find again, these small, mundane moments of intimacy that added up to a life shared. Adrian's bedroom was simple but beautiful. A large bed with a wrought iron frame, more bookshelves, a window that looked out onto his backyard where I could see the dark shapes of trees against the night sky. He pulled back the covers and we climbed in together, and it felt natural, like we'd been doing this for years. He clicked off the bedside lamp and we lay in the darkness, not touching at first, both of us figuring out how to navigate this new territory. Then Adrian reached for my hand, lacing our fingers together. Thank you for today, he said quietly, for trusting me enough to come here to let me in a little. I know it's not easy. Thank you for being patient with my mess. Your mess is part of what makes you interesting. I could hear the smile in his voice. Besides, you've seen my architectural portfolio, you know my secret shame of being too scared to pursue my dreams. We're even. I rolled onto my side, facing him in the darkness. What if we helped each other? Be brave, I mean, you encourage me to design again, and I'll encourage you to dust off those blueprints. Deal. He moved closer. And I could feel his warmth, smell his shampoo and toothpaste, and the scent that was uniquely him. Mason. Yes. I'm really glad you walked into my hotel. Me too. We kissed goodnight, tender and full of promise, and then I tucked myself against his chest, his arm around me, and let myself feel safe for the first time in 3 years. Outside, I could hear the distant sound of rain starting again, that quintessential Seattle sound that had once felt oppressive but now felt like coming home. I fell asleep to the rhythm of Adrian's breathing and the drumming of rain on the roof, and I didn't dream of Marcus at all. I woke to the smell of coffee and something baking, cinnamon, maybe, and the sound of Adrian humming in the kitchen. Sunlight streamed through the bedroom window, and for a moment I just lay there, soaking in the warmth and comfort and the surprising rightness of waking up in this house, in this bed. My phone showed 8:47 a.m. and a string of texts from Emma. How's it going? You're being suspiciously quiet. Mason David Cole text me back, or I'm assuming you've been kidnapped. I typed not kidnapped, everything's good, better than good actually. I stayed at Adrian's last night. Her response was immediate, eyes wet, call me now. Later, I promise. He's making breakfast. He makes breakfast? Okay, I need details, but also I'm happy for you. Be careful but also have fun. Love you. I pulled on the borrowed pajama pants and padded out to the kitchen where Adrian was indeed making breakfast. He'd changed into a soft flannel shirt and jeans, his hair still damp from a shower, and he looked so domestic and beautiful that my heart did something complicated in my chest. Good morning, he said, turning from the stove with a smile. I hope you like frittatas and cinnamon rolls. They're almost done. You made cinnamon rolls from scratch. My mother's recipe, Saturday morning tradition in our house growing up. He poured me a cup of coffee without asking, added just the right amount of cream and handed it to me. How do you feel? Like I slept better than I have in years. Good, me too. He checked the oven, then started plating the frittata, fluffy eggs studded with vegetables and cheese. I was thinking, if you don't have other plans today, we could do something together. Maybe drive to Snoqualmie Falls. It's about 45 minutes east, absolutely stunning this time of year. I'd love that. We ate breakfast at his small kitchen table, and the cinnamon rolls were just as good as everything else he made, sweet and gooey and perfect. Adrian told me about his plans to repaint his bedroom, debating between 3 different shades of blue. I found myself offering design advice, suggesting he create a mood board first, maybe incorporate some of those watercolor techniques from his architectural renderings. You know, he said thoughtfully, that's actually a great idea. I could photograph different times of day, see how the light changes, plan the color around that. See, you're already thinking like a designer again. After breakfast, I borrowed more clothes. Adrian was taller than me, but we were close enough in size that his jeans and sweater worked. We tidied the kitchen together and then we were back in his Volvo, heading east out of the city. The landscape changed quickly once we left Seattle's urban sprawl. Trees crowded the highway, their leaves turning gold and red in preparation for winter. The mountains rose ahead of us, jagged and snow-capped, and Adrian turned on music, something instrumental and atmospheric that fit the scenery perfectly. I haven't been out here in years, I said, watching the forest fly past. Marcus wasn't much for nature, he preferred the city. Is it hard? Adrian asked gently, talking about him. Less than it used to be. For so long, even thinking his name felt like getting stabbed. But now, I don't know, it's like the sharp edges have worn down a little. It still hurts, but it doesn't bleed anymore. That's healing. It doesn't mean you're over it completely or that it doesn't still matter. It just means you're not drowning in it anymore. Snoqualmie Falls was spectacular, a 268-foot waterfall thundering into a gorge, surrounded by evergreens and hiking trails. The viewing platform was crowded with tourists, but Adrian led me away from the main area down a less traveled path that offered different perspectives of the falls. I used to come here with my mother, he said, finding a spot where we could sit on a large rock and watch the water. She said it was proof that the world was still capable of beauty even when everything felt dark. She was right. We sat for a long time, not talking, just being present with the roar of the water and the mist that occasionally caught us. I found myself reaching for my phone not to check messages but to photograph the scene, not for Instagram or to show anyone but because I wanted to remember this moment. The light, the water, Adrian's hand in mine. Can I take your picture? I asked. He looked surprised but nodded, and I snapped a few shots of him with the falls in the background. In the viewfinder of my phone, he looked like he belonged there, a part of the landscape, as natural and elemental as the water and rock. Your turn, he said, taking my phone. I felt self-conscious in a way I hadn't expected, aware that he was capturing me in this moment of transition, of healing, of tentative hope. But I trusted him, so I let him photograph me, and when he showed me the results, I barely recognized myself. The man in the photo looked present, engaged, alive in a way I hadn't been in years. I like that guy, I said, studying my own image. Me too, he's pretty special. We hiked some of the trails around the falls, not pushing hard, just walking and talking and occasionally stopping to admire a particularly beautiful view. Adrian pointed out plants and trees, told me stories about the Native American significance of the falls, made me laugh with stories about bringing Sam here when they were teenagers, and getting lost for 6 hours because neither of them wanted to admit they had no idea where they were. On the drive back, my phone rang. I glanced at the screen and felt my stomach drop. Marcus. Everything okay? Adrian asked, noticing my reaction. It's my ex, Marcus. Do you want to answer it? I stared at the phone, watching it ring, feeling 3 years of unprocessed emotions swirling in my chest. I don't know. You don't have to decide right now, let it go to voicemail, you can deal with it when you're ready. The ringing stopped, and a moment later my phone chimed with a voicemail notification. I put the phone in my pocket without listening to it. How did he even know I'm in Seattle? I said, more to myself than to Adrian. Your sister maybe, or mutual friends. Maybe. I felt shaky, like the ground had suddenly become unstable. I'm sorry, this is probably not how you wanted to spend your day off dealing with my ex-boyfriend drama. Adrian reached over and took my hand. Mason, I'm not scared of your past or your complications, we all have them. If you need to talk about it, I'm here. If you need to process it alone, that's okay too, but don't apologize for having a history, it's part of what makes you who you are. I squeezed his hand, grateful beyond words. Can we just keep driving for a bit? I'm not ready to go back yet. Absolutely, I know a place. He took an exit I didn't recognize, and we wound through small towns that felt frozen in time, old hardware stores, diners with hand-painted signs, churches with steeples that reached toward the sky. Eventually, we pulled into a small park beside a lake that reflected the mountains like a mirror. Rattlesnake Lake, Adrian said. Another one of my thinking spots, less dramatic than Discovery Park but peaceful. We walked along the shore and the autumn air was crisp and clean, scented with pine and water. There were fewer people here, a couple with a dog, some teenagers throwing rocks, a woman painting at an easel. It felt like the kind of place where you could breathe, where there was room for big feelings without being overwhelmed by them. Do you want to talk about it? Adrian asked eventually. The call. I don't know what there is to say. He left 3 years ago, didn't even have the courage to do it face to face, just a note and an empty closet and silence. I tried calling him, texting, emailing, nothing. It was like he'd erased me from his existence. I picked up a stone and threw it into the lake, watching the ripples spread. And now he calls, after 3 years. What could he possibly want? Maybe he heard your back, maybe he wants closure. Maybe he wants absolution. I threw another stone, harder this time. Maybe he wants me to tell him it's okay, that I forgive him, that he didn't completely destroy me. Do you forgive him? I thought about it, really thought about it. I don't know, part of me wants to keep hatting him because anger feels safer than vulnerability, and part of me, I trailed off, struggling to articulate the complicated truth. Part of you what? Part of me is grateful, which sounds insane, I know, but if he hadn't left, I'd still be in that relationship that was slowly suffocating both of us. I'd still be pretending to be happy, playing the role of the perfect boyfriend, never asking for what I really needed. His leaving broke me, but it also freed me, eventually. Adrian was quiet, and when I looked at him, his expression was thoughtful. That's very mature of you and very honest. I've had 3 years to think about it. Lots of therapy, lots of late-night existential crises. Are you going to listen to the voicemail? Eventually, but not today. Today is ours. I turned to face him fully. Is that okay, that I'm choosing to put this off? More than okay, you get to decide how and when you deal with your past. There's no timeline for healing, no right way to handle this. We found a bench overlooking the lake and sat close together, Adrian's arm around my shoulders, my head resting against his chest. I could hear his heartbeat, steady and sure, and it grounded me when everything else felt uncertain. Thank you, I said quietly, for today, for not running away when things got complicated. Mason, I meant what I said last night. I'm choosing this, all of it, the good parts and the messy parts and everything in between. Even when my ex calls out of nowhere and I have a minor breakdown. Especially then, that's when you need someone most. I tilted my head up and kissed him, trying to pour 3 years of loneliness and today's fear and tomorrow's hope into that one gesture. He kissed me back with equal intensity, his hands in my hair, and for a moment everything else disappeared. Marcus, the voicemail, my uncertainty about the future. There was only this, Adrian's lips on mine, the autumn sun warm on my face, the sense that maybe, just maybe, I was exactly where I needed to be. We spent the rest of the afternoon exploring the small towns around Rattlesnake Lake, antiquing in North Bend, grabbing coffee at a local roaster, wandering through a used bookstore where we both found treasures we couldn't resist. Adrian bought a first edition of poetry by Pablo Neruda. I found a vintage design book from the 1960s with incredible mid-century modern illustrations. By the time we headed back to Seattle, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange that seemed impossible. Adrian drove with one hand on the wheel and the other holding mine, and we talked about nothing important, favorite movies, childhood pets, the best concerts we'd ever been to. It felt normal, easy, like we'd been doing this for years instead of days. But the voicemail sat in my phone like a weight, and eventually Adrian noticed my distraction. Do you want to listen to it? He asked as we pulled back into the city. I can give you privacy or I can be there with you, whatever you need. I pulled out my phone and stared at the notification. Would you be there with me? I don't think I can do this alone. Of course. He drove to his house instead of the hotel and we settled on his couch with tea that Adrian made while I worked up the courage. Finally, with him beside me, his hand on my knee, I put the phone on speaker and pressed play. Mason, hi, it's Marcus. I heard you're back in Seattle. Emma told me I ran into her at the grocery store and she mentioned you were in town. I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from and I'd understand if you deleted this without listening, but I was hoping we could talk, not to get back together or anything like that. I owe you an explanation, a real one, and an apology. I've thought about calling you 1,000 times over the past 3 years, and I was always too much of a coward. But knowing you're here in Seattle, it feels like maybe the universe is giving me one last chance to make things right, or at least less wrong. If you're willing to meet even just for coffee, I'd really appreciate it. You can text me at this number, I hope. I hope you're doing well, Mason. You deserve to be happy. Okay, bye. The message ended, and silence filled the room. Well, I said finally, that was unexpected. How do you feel? I don't know. I set the phone down and leaned back against the couch. Angry, confused, curious, which I hate admitting. 3 years, Adrian, 3 years of silence, and now he wants to talk because it's convenient for him. You don't owe him anything, not your time, not your forgiveness, not even a response. I know, but part of me wonders if I need this, not for him but for me, to actually get closure instead of just running away from the past. Adrian was quiet for a moment, his thumb tracing circles on my knee. Can I tell you something from my own experience? Please. After Daniel left, I spent months obsessing over what I could have done differently. I replayed every conversation, every argument, every moment where I might have pushed him away. And then, about 6 months after the breakup, he reached out. He wanted to meet, to explain, to apologize, and I said no. Really? Really, because I realized that his explanation wouldn't change anything. He'd still have left, I'd still have been hurt. And giving him the opportunity to absolve his guilt wouldn't heal my wounds, it would just reopen them so he could feel better about himself. He shifted to face me more fully. But that was my choice and it was right for me. Your choice might be different. If you think meeting Marcus will help you move forward, then do it. Just make sure you're doing it for yourself, not for him. I thought about that, really thought about it. What did I want from Marcus? An explanation for why he left, an apology, validation that our relationship had meant something, or was I just looking for someone to blame for 3 years of pain that, ultimately, I'd inflicted on myself by running? I think I need to meet him, I said slowly. But not because I want to give him closure, because I want to prove to myself that I can face my past without falling apart, that he doesn't have power over me anymore. Then that's your answer. Adrian leaned over and kissed my temple, and I'll be here afterward whatever happens. You really are too good to be true, you know that. I have plenty of flaws, you just haven't discovered them all yet. Name one. He thought about it. I'm a terrible morning person before coffee, like unreasonably grumpy. Sam says I'm unbearable before 10 a.m. if I don't have caffeine. I've seen you in the morning, you made me breakfast. After 2 cups of coffee that I drank while you were still asleep. I laughed despite the heaviness of the past hour. Okay, that's one flaw, what else? I'm obsessively neat, like I have to make the bed immediately after getting up, and I organize my bookshelves by genre and then by color, and it bothers me if throw pillows aren't arranged correctly. That's not a flaw, that's just being organized. You say that now, wait until I'm rearranging your stuff because it doesn't match my system. I'll take that risk. We spent the evening cooking dinner together, pasta again, this time with a homemade marinara sauce that Adrian's mother had taught him to make. He showed me the technique, the way she'd insisted on crushing the tomatoes by hand, the exact moment to add the basil, the secret splash of balsamic vinegar at the end. She'd have liked you, he said as we stirred the sauce. She had a thing about people's eyes. She said you could tell everything about a person by their eyes, and yours, they're honest. Even when you're hurting, you don't try to hide it. Is that a good thing? It's a rare thing. Most people spend their whole lives hiding. He tasted the sauce, added a pinch more salt. She'd have said you were someone worth knowing. After dinner, we settled on the couch with wine, and I finally texted Marcus. I'll meet you, tomorrow 2 p.m. Lighthouse Roasters on Fremont, don't be late. His response came within seconds. Thank you, I'll be there, I promise. I showed Adrian the exchange and he nodded approvingly. Public place, afternoon, specific time, smart, you're in control of the situation. I'm terrified. That's normal, but you're brave enough to be terrified and still show up. That's what matters. I stayed at Adrian's again that night, and we lay in his bed talking until late, about everything except Marcus and tomorrow's meeting. Adrian told me about his dream of maybe opening a small bed and breakfast someday, combining his love of hospitality with his architectural design skills. I told him about a graphic novel I'd always wanted to illustrate, about cities built on clouds and love stories that transcended time. You should do it, he said. The graphic novel, even if no one ever sees it, even if it's just for you, create something that matters to you. Maybe I will, maybe being back here is about more than just facing my past. Maybe it's about finally building a future. He kissed me then, slow and sweet, and I felt myself falling, not in love, not yet, but into something that could become love if we were patient enough and brave enough and lucky enough. Stay in Seattle, he whispered against my lips. Not for me necessarily, but for yourself, stop running. I'm considering it. Good, because I'm not ready to say goodbye to you yet. Me neither. We fell asleep tangled together, and I dreamed not of Marcus but of a blue house with wind chimes, of a man with kind eyes and careful hands, of a life that could be mine if I was brave enough to reach for it. The next morning, Adrian had to work covering for a colleague who'd called in sick. He offered to cancel to stay with me, but I insisted he go. I need to do this on my own, I told him as we drank coffee in his kitchen. Not because I don't want your support, but because I need to prove to myself that I can. I understand, but text me when it's over, or call if you need me to come get you. I will, I promise. He drove me back to the Emerald Grand. I'd need to check out soon, I realized, or at least make a decision about how much longer I'd stay, and kissed me goodbye in the parking garage where no one could see. You've got this, he said. Remember, you don't owe him anything. This is for you, not him. For me, right. I showered and changed in my hotel room, trying on 3 different outfits before settling on dark jeans and a navy sweater. I wanted to look put together, but not like I'd tried too hard. I wanted Marcus to see that I'd survived, that I'd moved on, even if the truth was more complicated than that. Lighthouse Roasters was a coffee shop I'd never been to during my Seattle years, another deliberate choice. Neutral territory where no memories lurked. I arrived 15 minutes early and ordered a cortado, then claimed a table by the window where I could see Marcus coming. At 1:58 he appeared. He looked different, thinner maybe, or just older. His hair was shorter, styled differently. He wore glasses now, round frames that made him look more like the mathematician he was. But his walk was the same, that confident stride that had first attracted me, the sense that he knew exactly where he was going. He spotted me through the window and something flickered across his face. Regret, fear, hope, I couldn't tell. He entered the cafe, ordered something at the counter, and then approached my table like a man walking to his execution. Mason, he said, thank you for meeting me. Marcus. He sat down across from me, and for a moment we just looked at each other. This man had been my everything for 5 years. I'd known his body as well as my own, had memorized his habits and preferences and the exact way he liked his coffee. And now he was a stranger wearing a familiar face. You look good, he said finally, healthy. You too. Silence stretched between us, awkward and heavy. His coffee arrived and he wrapped his hands around the cup like he needed something to hold onto. I don't know where to start, he admitted. I've rehearsed this conversation 1,000 times in my head, and now that you're actually here, every word I planned sounds inadequate. Try anyway. He took a breath. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm so incredibly sorry for the way I left, for the cowardice of a note instead of a conversation, for 3 years of silence. There's no excuse for any of it. You deserved better. You deserved so much better. Why? The question came out harder than I intended. Why did you leave? Why like that? Because I was a coward. Because I'd known for months that I wasn't happy, that we weren't working, but I couldn't figure out how to tell you. Every time I tried to start the conversation, I'd look at you and see how much you loved me, and I'd convince myself I was wrong, that I was being selfish, that I should try harder. So you just left. You didn't think I deserved an explanation. I didn't think I deserved to give you one. I'd convinced myself that you'd be better off hating me than trying to understand me, that a clean break would hurt less than a slow deterioration. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. A clean break? Marcus, you shattered me. I spent 3 years running from city to city, trying to outrun the pain of waking up that morning and finding you gone. You don't get to call that clean. I know, and I'm sorry. I was thinking about my pain, my guilt, my inability to face what I'd done. I wasn't thinking about you at all. Finally, some honesty. He flinched. I deserve that. You deserve a lot more than that. I took a sip of my cortado, trying to calm the anger rising in my chest. But I didn't come here to punish you, even though part of me wants to. I came here because I need to understand. What happened, Marcus? What went so wrong that you couldn't even talk to me about it? He was quiet for a long time, staring into his coffee. When he finally spoke, his voice was small. I felt invisible. I know that sounds stupid given that we lived together, slept together, supposedly loved each other. But somewhere along the way, I started feeling like you were in love with an idea of me rather than the actual me. You'd talk about our future, the house we'd buy, the trips we'd take, the life we'd build, and I realized I wasn't in any of those visions. Not the real me anyway. Just this perfect version you'd created in your head. The words hit like a physical blow because there was truth in them. I thought back to those years with Marcus, to the way I'd planned our life down to the smallest detail, always assuming he wanted what I wanted, never asking if he was happy. I asked if you were happy, I said, but even as the words left my mouth, I knew they were weak. You always said yes. I said what I thought you wanted to hear. That's not your fault, that's mine. I should have been honest. I should have told you I was drowning in your plans, that I needed room to breathe, that I wasn't sure I wanted the picture-perfect life you'd mapped out for us. So you chose to blow up our entire relationship instead of having one difficult conversation. Yes, and it was the worst mistake of my life. He finally met my eyes and I saw tears there. I've dated other people since then, tried to move on, but every relationship ends the same way, with me realizing that I destroyed something real because I was too much of a coward to fight for it. You think we could have fixed it if you talked to me? I don't know, maybe, or maybe we'd have realized we wanted different things and ended it anyway. But at least we'd have ended it honestly, with respect for what we'd shared. Instead, I left you with questions and pain, and I can't take that back. I sat with that, feeling 3 years of anger and hurt and confusion starting to shift into something different. Understanding, maybe, or at least the beginning of it. I need you to know something, I said carefully. For a long time I thought I'd never recover from what you did. I thought you'd broken something in me that couldn't be fixed. And in a way you did. I'm not the same person I was 3 years ago. I'm more cautious, more aware of my own tendency to create fantasies instead of dealing with reality. Mason. Let me finish, I held up a hand. But I also realized something. The way you left wasn't about me. It was about you and your inability to communicate, your fear of conflict, your pattern of running away when things get hard. And I can't carry that for you anymore. I spent 3 years making your choice to leave, about my failings, about what I did wrong, about how I wasn't enough. But the truth is you made a choice, a cowardly, hurtful choice, and that's on you, not me. He nodded, tears running down his face now. You're right, you're absolutely right. I don't know if I can forgive you, not yet, maybe not ever, but I can release you. I can stop carrying around all this anger and resentment and let both of us move forward. That's more than I deserve. Probably, but I'm not doing it for you, I'm doing it for me. I finished my cortado and stood. I hope you figure out how to communicate with people, Marcus. I hope you stop running away when things get hard, and I hope you find someone who sees you, the real you, and loves that person. He stood too uncertain. Can I hug you goodbye? I hesitated, then nodded. It was brief and awkward, like hugging a former acquaintance rather than someone who'd once been the center of my world. And that felt right, felt like proof that I really had moved on. Take care of yourself, I said. You too, and Mason, Emma mentioned you met someone. I hope they treat you better than I did. They do, he does. I walked out of Lighthouse Roasters and into the afternoon sun, and I felt lighter than I had in 3 years. The anger was still there, that would take time to fully process, but it no longer consumed me. Marcus was just a person who'd hurt me, who'd made mistakes, who was struggling with his own demons. He wasn't a villain, wasn't the source of all my pain. He was just Marcus. I pulled out my phone and texted Adrian. It's done, I'm okay. Actually better than okay, can I see you? His response was immediate. Meet me at the Blue Note. I'm helping Sam with inventory, but I'd love to see you. I walked there, taking my time, letting the Seattle afternoon wash over me. The city felt different now, less like a crime scene of my former life and more like a place where new memories could be made, where I could build something real instead of running from something painful. The Blue Note was empty except for Adrian and Sam, who were counting bottles behind the bar. Adrian looked up when I entered, read something in my expression, and immediately came to me. How was it? He asked. Necessary, painful, ultimately healing, I think. I let him pull me into a hug. He apologized, explained, it doesn't fix anything, but it gives me closure. Sam appeared beside us with 3 glasses and a bottle of whiskey. This calls for a drink. Nobody faces their ex and walks away unscathed. I'm scathed, I admitted, but not destroyed, that's progress. We sat at the bar and Sam poured generous amounts of what she claimed was the good stuff. She raised her glass, to facing your past. To moving forward, Adrian added. To not being destroyed, I finished. We drank and the whiskey burned in the best way, warming me from the inside out. So what now? Sam asked. Are you staying in Seattle or going back to, where were you living, Boston? I don't know yet, I admitted, glancing at Adrian. I came here thinking I'd figure out if I could live in this city again without feeling haunted, and today proved I can, but that doesn't automatically mean I should stay. Why not? Sam asked bluntly. You clearly love it here, you have history here, and you have, she gestured at Adrian, whatever this is. Sam, Adrian warned. What? I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. She poured herself another finger of whiskey. Look, Mason, I don't know you well yet, but I know my cousin and I haven't seen him this happy in 2 years, so forgive me for hopping you stick around. I felt Adrian tense beside me and I reached for his hand under the bar. It's complicated. Everything worth doing is complicated, Sam said. Simple is boring, simple is settling. Complicated means you care enough to work through the mess. When did you become so wise? Adrian asked. I've always been wise, you just don't listen. She winked at me. But seriously, take your time, figure out what you need, just know that Seattle would be lucky to have you back. We stayed at the Blue Note for another hour, helping Sam finish inventory and sharing stories. She told me about growing up with Adrian, about the time they'd tried to sneak into an R-rated movie and got caught by his mother, about their failed attempt to start a band in high school that lasted exactly 3 weeks before they admitted neither of them could carry a tune. He can, however, play a mean piano, Sam said, gesturing to the baby grand in the corner of the bar. You play? I asked Adrian. He shrugged, embarrassed. Not really, I mean I can, but... He's being modest, he's amazing. Go on, play something for your boyfriend. He's not Adrian started, then caught my eye and stopped. Are you? The question hung in the air and I realized we'd never actually defined what this was between us. We'd kissed, shared beds, shared our darkest fears and biggest dreams, but we hadn't put a label on it. Do you want me to be? I asked. Yes, very much yes. Then I guess I am. Sam made a sound of triumph. Finally, now play him something beautiful so I can feel like I'm in a movie. Adrian rolled his eyes but stood, pulling me toward the piano. He sat on the bench and patted the space beside him, and I settled in close enough that our thighs touched. His hands moved across the keys, finding a melody I didn't recognize, something classical but with a modern twist, melancholic but hopeful. What is this? I whispered. Something I wrote years ago after my mother died. I called it Aftermath. I watched his hands dance across the keys, watched his face as he played, and I understood why Sam had insisted. This was Adrian stripped bare, vulnerable in a way words couldn't capture. The music spoke of loss and longing, of finding beauty in broken things, of the slow, painful process of healing. When the last notes faded, the bar was silent except for Sam sniffling behind the counter. Damn it, Adrian, she said, wiping her eyes. I forgot how good you are. It needs work, I haven't played it in years. It's perfect, I said and meant it. Thank you for sharing it with me. He kissed me then, soft and brief but full of meaning. Thank you for listening. That night back at Adrian's house, we lay in bed talking about the future in abstract terms, neither of us pushing for concrete answers. What would make you happy? Adrian asked, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on my arm. If you could design your perfect life, what would it look like? I thought about it, really thought about it. I think I want to create things that matter, not corporate logos or website designs that no one really cares about. I want to make art that connects with people, that makes them feel something. Maybe that graphic novel I mentioned, or maybe something else entirely. That sounds perfect for you. And I want a home, not just a place to sleep, but a real home with history and character and room for mistakes. I want to plant a garden and watch it grow. I want to have people over for dinner parties where we drink too much wine and laugh too loud. Keep going. I want someone who sees me, not who I pretend to be or who I used to be, but who I actually am right now in this moment with all my damage and doubt and messy emotions. Someone who isn't scared of the hard conversations, who shows up even when things get complicated. Adrian was quiet for a moment. That sounds like something you could have here in Seattle. It sounds like something I could have with you. Is that terrifying? Absolutely, but the good kind of terrifying. The kind that means I'm choosing something real instead of running away from it. He rolled over to face me, propping himself up on one elbow. I don't want to pressure you. I know you came here to figure out your life, and I don't want to be a factor that clouds your judgment, but I also don't want to pretend I don't care. I do care, Mason. I care a lot, and if you decided to stay, I'd want to see where this goes. Really see, not just casual dating, but actually building something together. Even though we've only known each other for 4 days. Time is weird. Some people know each other for years and never really see each other. We've seen each other from day one. That counts for something. I leaned in and kissed him, trying to put all my tangled emotions into that one gesture. I want to stay, I'm scared, and I don't have a plan, and I might be making a huge mistake, but I want to try. His smile was radiant. Yeah, I'll need to figure out logistics, find an apartment, set up a proper workspace for freelancing, maybe reach out to some of my old Seattle contacts to see if there's work available. But yes, I want to stay. We can figure it all out together if you want, or you can do it on your own and I'll just be here cheering you on, whatever you need. Together sounds good. We made plans late into the night, talking about neighborhoods I might like, discussing whether I should look for a studio or one bedroom, debating the merits of various coworking spaces for freelancers. Adrian knew the city intimately, could rattle off the pros and cons of every neighborhood, knew which coffee shops had the best Wi-Fi and which parks were perfect for thinking. What about Fremont? He suggested. You liked it when we went to see the Troll. It's artsy, walkable, good restaurants, and it's close to here. Close to you mean? Well, yes, selfishly, I'd like to be able to see you without a 40-minute drive, but only if that's what you want too. I want that very much. The next morning, I checked out of the Emerald Grand. The same concierge who'd greeted me that first rain-soaked night, Adrian, processed my checkout with a professional smile that didn't quite hide his happiness. I hope you enjoyed your stay, Mr. Cole, he said formally, though his eyes danced with amusement. Best hotel experience of my life, I replied, matching his tone. The concierge service was particularly exceptional. We aim to please. Will you be returning to Seattle in the future? Actually, I'm staying, found something here worth staying for. His smile broke through the professional facade. Best decision you ever made. We'll see, ask me again in 6 months. I will every day, probably. I moved my few belongings to Adrian's house temporarily while I searched for an apartment. He cleared space in his closet and gave me a drawer, and it felt both too fast and exactly right. We fell into a routine that felt natural, morning coffee together before he left for work, evenings cooking dinner and talking about our days, weekends exploring the city and slowly rebuilding my sense of Seattle as home rather than crime scene. I reached out to Emma, told her everything. She was supportive but cautious, reminding me to take things slow to make sure I was making decisions for myself rather than for Adrian. I appreciated her concern, but I also knew what I was doing. For the first time in 3 years, I was choosing something rather than running from something. I started freelancing again, reaching out to old contacts and putting together a portfolio that reflected my current work rather than who I used to be. The responses were encouraging. Several companies remembered me from my pre-running days and were interested in working together again. One offered me a contract designing branding for a new tech startup, and the pay was good enough that I could actually afford Seattle's ridiculous rent prices. I found an apartment in Fremont, a small one-bedroom in an old building with character and creaky floors and windows that overlooked a community garden. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. Adrian helped me move in on a Saturday along with Sam and her girlfriend Renee, who I'd met a few times at the Blue Note. This place has good bones, Sam declared, standing in the middle of my empty living room. Paint the walls something other than beige, get some plants, and it'll be perfect. I was thinking dark blue, I said, like the ocean at night. Poetic and practical, I like it. We spent the day painting. Adrian had, of course, brought all the right supplies and knew the proper technique, and by evening my apartment was transformed. The blue walls made the space feel intimate rather than small, and with a few pieces of second-hand furniture and some prints I'd hung, it started to feel like home. You're nesting, Adrian observed as we stood in the doorway surveying our work. It's adorable. I haven't nested in 3 years, I'm out of practice. "You're doing great." He wrapped his arms around me from behind, resting his chin on my shoulder. "I'm proud of you, coming back here, facing Marcus, choosing to stay. That takes real courage. I had help, I couldn't have done it without you." "Maybe, but you're the one who showed up. I just held your hand along the way." That night, I slept in my own bed in my own apartment for the first time in 3 years. Adrian stayed with me and we christened the new space properly, learning each other's bodies with careful attention and escalating passion. Afterward, tangled in sheets that still smelled like the store, he said, "I think I'm falling in love with you." I should have been scared. It was too soon, too fast, too risky, but instead I felt only certainty. Good, because I think I'm falling in love with you too. Think. No, I know I'm falling in love with you. He kissed me then, deep and thorough, and I felt the last walls around my heart crumble. This was what I'd been looking for when I came back to Seattle, not just closure with Marcus, but the possibility of opening myself up to love again. Real love, messy and complicated and worth every risk. The weeks turned into months, and I settled into my Seattle life with surprising ease. The freelance work kept me busy but not overwhelmed, and I started taking on projects that excited me creatively rather than just paying the bills. I designed a logo for a local LGBTQ+ youth center that I was particularly proud of, a rainbow that doubled as a bridge, symbolizing connection and safe passage. Adrian and I fell into a rhythm that felt sustainable. We spent most nights together, alternating between his house and my apartment, but we also maintained our independence. He had his work and the Blue Note responsibilities. I had my design projects and had started outlining that graphic novel. We had our individual lives and our shared life, and the balance felt healthy. I made friends beyond Adrian's circle, other designers I met at a local coffee shop that had become my workspace. Neighbors in my building, people I met through volunteering at the youth center. I was building a life that was mine, not just the life I'd had before Marcus or the life I was building with Adrian, but something uniquely my own. I also started therapy with a counselor who specialized in trauma and relationship issues. Dr. Chen was in her 50s, no nonsense but compassionate, and she helped me unpack 3 years of running and a lifetime of patterns that had set me up for heartbreak. "You have a tendency to make yourself small," she observed during one session. "You shrink your needs, your desires, your very self to fit into what you think others want from you, and then you're hurt when they can't see the real you, but how could they when you've been hiding it?" "I don't do that with Adrian," I protested. "Don't you? You moved to Seattle and immediately into a relationship. You're building your life around his schedule, his neighborhood, his friends. I'm not saying that's wrong, but I'm asking if you're doing it because it's what you want or because you're afraid that being fully yourself will drive him away." The question haunted me for days. Was I falling into old patterns? Was I letting Adrian dictate my life the way I'd tried to dictate Marcus's? I brought it up one night over dinner at his place. "Do you think I'm making myself small for you?" He looked startled. "What? No, where is this coming from?" "Therapy." Dr. Chen pointed out that I have a pattern of shrinking myself to fit what I think people want from me, and I'm worried I'm doing that with you. Adrian set down his fork, giving me his full attention. "Are you? Because if you are, I want you to stop. I fell for you because of who you are, not who you think I want you to be." "But how do I know the difference? How do I know if I'm choosing to spend time with you because I genuinely want to or because I'm afraid of being alone?" "I don't know if you can know for certain, but I think the fact that you're asking the question is a good sign. It means you're aware of the pattern and trying to break it." He reached across the table and took my hand. "Mason, if you need space, take it. If you need to spend more nights at your place, do it. If you need to say no to things I invite you to, say no. I promise I won't take it personally. I want you to be whole, not just a satellite orbiting around my life." That conversation shifted something between us. I started being more intentional about my choices, spending 2 or 3 nights a week at my own apartment, making plans with my non-Adrian friends, taking on projects that excited me even if they conflicted with our usual schedule. And Adrian supported it all, never making me feel guilty, always genuinely happy when I shared my experiences. 6 months in, I had my first gallery showing. A local art space was featuring emerging designers, and I'd submitted some pieces from my portfolio along with preliminary sketches from the graphic novel. To my surprise and terror, they'd accepted me. The opening was on a Friday night, and I was convinced no one would come except Adrian and maybe Sam out of obligation. Instead, the gallery was packed. Old friends I'd reconnected with, new friends I'd made, colleagues from the tech community, and strangers who'd seen the promotional materials and were curious. Adrian arrived with an enormous bouquet of flowers and a smile that made my heart skip. "You did this," he said, gesturing around the gallery. "Look at what you created." I looked around at my work displayed on white walls under perfect lighting, at people studying my designs and nodding in appreciation, at the graphic novel pages that showed the beginnings of the story I'd been carrying inside me for years. And I felt proud. Actually, genuinely proud of myself in a way I hadn't been in as long as I could remember. Marcus showed up, surprisingly. I saw him standing awkwardly near the entrance, clearly debating whether to approach. I excused myself from the conversation I was having and went to him. "I saw the announcement on social media," he said. "I hope it's okay that I came. I wanted to see what you've been working on." "It's okay," I said, and meant it. The anger I'd carried for so long had finally dissipated into simple indifference. He was just another person at my gallery showing, not the axis around which my emotional world revolved. "This is really good, Mason, like really, really good. I always knew you were talented, but this," he gestured at a large print of my youth center logo, "this is special." "Thank you. And you seem happy, really happy. I'm glad." I really am." We talked for a few more minutes, surface-level conversation about his work, his life, nothing deep or meaningful. And when he left, I felt nothing except maybe a small sense of gratitude that he'd cared enough to come, and relief that I no longer needed anything from him. Adrian appeared at my elbow with champagne. "How are you feeling?" "Like maybe I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." "Good, because you are," he clinked his glass against mine. "To new beginnings and old endings and everything in between. To not running away. To standing still long enough to build something beautiful." The gallery showing led to more opportunities. A design firm wanted to hire me part-time, a publisher was interested in the graphic novel, and I'd been approached about teaching a workshop on logo design at the local community college. My life was filling up with purpose and passion and work that mattered, and I'd never felt more fulfilled. But of course, life isn't a straight line toward happiness. Around the 8-month mark, Adrian and I hit our first real rough patch. It started with small things, miscommunications, missed plans, the inevitable friction that comes when two independent people try to build something together. I'd scheduled a work call during a time Adrian thought we had dinner plans. He'd invited friends over without checking if I was available. I was stressed about a deadline and snapped at him over something trivial. None of it was catastrophic, but it accumulated into a tension that neither of us quite knew how to address. The breaking point came on a Tuesday night. I'd had a brutal day. A client had rejected 3 rounds of revisions and was now demanding something completely different. My landlord had informed me the rent was going up, and I'd spilled coffee all over my laptop. I showed up at Adrian's house exhausted and frustrated, just wanting comfort. Instead, I found him hosting an impromptu gathering for some of his coworkers. The house was full of people I didn't know, music playing loud, everyone laughing and drinking and having a great time. "Mason," Adrian called out when he saw me, "perfect timing, come meet everyone." "I thought we were having a quiet night," I said, trying to keep the irritation from my voice. "We were, but then James texted saying everyone was going out and I suggested they come here instead. It's more comfortable than a bar and you know how I feel about overpriced cocktails." He was smiling, oblivious to my mood. "Come on, don't be antisocial." Something in me snapped. "I'm not being antisocial, I'm tired. I had a terrible day and I came here because I thought we had plans that didn't include entertaining a dozen strangers." His smile faded. "They're not strangers, they're my friends and coworkers, and I didn't realize I needed to run my social calendar past you." "You don't, but a heads up would have been nice. I texted you 2 hours ago." I pulled out my phone and sure enough, there was a message I'd missed in the chaos of my day. "Oh. Yeah, oh," now Adrian was getting annoyed. "Look, if you don't want to stay, that's fine, but don't make me feel guilty for having people over to my own house." "I'm not." I stopped, realizing we were having this argument in his entryway with a dozen people able to hear every word. "Can we talk about this somewhere private?" "There is nowhere private, my house is full of people." "Exactly, which is why I'm leaving." I turned and walked out before he could respond, anger and hurt and exhaustion all tangling together in my chest. I drove back to my apartment, poured myself a generous glass of wine and promptly burst into tears. This was what I'd been afraid of, that I'd fall back into old patterns, that the first real conflict would send me running, that I'd prove Dr. Chen right about my inability to handle discomfort in relationships. I'd overreacted, walked away instead of working through it, and now Adrian probably thought I was dramatic and unreasonable. My phone rang, Adrian. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again, voicemail again, then a text. Please don't shut me out. I'm sorry for not being more considerate. Can we talk? I stared at the message. My therapist's voice in my head, running away is a choice, so is staying and fighting for what matters. I called him back. Thank you for answering, he said immediately. I asked everyone to leave. Can I come over? You didn't have to kick everyone out. Yes, I did, because you matter more than a spontaneous party. Can I come over? Yes. He arrived 20 minutes later with takeout containers from my favorite Thai place. Peace offering, he said, holding them up. And an apology. I should have been more thoughtful. I knew you were having a hard day, and instead of being there for you, I created more chaos. I overreacted, I admitted, letting him in. I could have stayed, met your friends, tried to make the best of it. Instead, I stormed off like a teenager. You set a boundary. That's not overreacting. We sat on my couch with the Thai food between us, and we actually talked, really talked, about what had happened. About expectations and communication and the need to balance individual wants with relationship needs. About my fear of being the difficult partner and Adrian's fear of being too accommodating and losing himself. I don't want to be Marcus, I said quietly. I don't want to make everything about me and my needs and ignore what you want. You're not Marcus, and I don't want to be Daniel, who prioritized everything except his relationship. We're going to mess up sometimes, Mason. We're going to miscommunicate and disappoint each other and have nights like this. But that doesn't mean we're doomed, it means we're human. Dr. Chen said I have a tendency to see everything in black and white. Either the relationship is perfect or it's failing. Either you're my soulmate or we're wrong for each other. And what do you actually think? Not the catastrophizing version, the real version. I thought about it, really thought about it. I think we're two people who care about each other, trying to figure out how to build something together, and I think tonight was hard, but we're here, talking about it instead of running away. That has to count for something. It counts for everything? He took my hand, lacing our fingers together. I love you, Mason, even when you storm off in a huff, even when we fight, even when things are complicated and messy and not at all perfect. I love you. I love you too, which is terrifying, by the way. The best things usually are. We ate our Thai food and talked late into the night about boundaries and expectations and how to fight fair. We agreed to have regular check-ins about our schedule and needs, to not assume the other person knew what we wanted, to speak up when something bothered us instead of letting it fester. It wasn't a perfect solution. There would be more fights, more miscommunications, more moments where we frustrated each other. But it was a start. It was us choosing to work through the hard stuff instead of running from it. 1 year. A year after I'd walked into the Emerald Grand looking for a place to hide from my past, Adrian and I celebrated our anniversary. He'd wanted to do something elaborate, dinner at Seattle's fanciest restaurant, maybe a weekend trip to the San Juans, but I'd lobbied for something simpler. We went back to Discovery Park, to the beach where we'd had our first real conversation. It was a clear night, unseasonably warm for October, and the lighthouse beam swept across the water just as it had that first night. I can't believe it's been a year, Adrian said, his arm around me as we sat on our driftwood log. Best year of my life, I said, even with the fights and the stress and all the complicated parts. Because of the fights and stress and complicated parts, that's what makes it real. We'd brought a picnic, cheese and crackers and the expensive wine Adrian liked, plus chocolate-covered strawberries because I had a sweet tooth he loved to indulge. We ate and drank and watched the lighthouse keep its faithful rhythm, and I felt a contentment I'd never experienced before. I have something for you, Adrian said, pulling a flat package from his bag. Anniversary present. I unwrapped it to find a framed architectural drawing, a house, rendered in Adrian's distinctive style. It was small but beautiful, with large windows and a wraparound porch and what looked like a garden integrated into the design. "It's gorgeous," I said, "one of your student projects." "No, it's new, I've been working on it for months." He pointed to different elements. "Office space here for your design work, my music room here, a kitchen big enough for both of us to cook together, a guest room for when your sister visits or when Sam has won too many drinks and needs to crash." I looked at him, my heart suddenly pounding. "Adrian, what is this?" "It's a dream, a maybe someday dream." He took my hands, suddenly nervous. "I know we said we'd take things slow, maintain our separate spaces, and I'm not saying we have to rush into anything, but I wanted you to see it, to see what I'm imagining for us. A home we designed together, built exactly how we want it." "You designed us a house. I designed us a home, there's a difference." I studied the drawing, seeing all the care and thought he'd put into it. The way he'd created space for both of us to work and be together, the way he'd incorporated natural light and outdoor space, the way every detail spoke of a life fully lived and shared. "It's perfect," I said, my voice rough with emotion. "When?" "Whenever you're ready, 2 years from now, 5 years, 10, or never if you decide you prefer living separately. This is just possibility, a blueprint for one version of our future." I kissed him then, trying to pour a year's worth of love and gratitude and hope into that gesture. "I want it, maybe not tomorrow, maybe not even next year, but someday I want to build this with you." "Yes. Yeah, let's build something beautiful together." The lighthouse swept over us, and I thought about the journey that had brought me here, the pain and the running and the slow, difficult process of learning to stand still. A year ago, I'd been so broken I couldn't imagine ever being whole again. But here I was, whole enough to imagine a future, brave enough to say yes to possibility. "I have something for you too," I said, pulling out my phone. "It's not wrapped or anything, but—" I showed him the email I'd received that morning. The publisher wanted to move forward with my graphic novel, with a publication date tentatively set for next fall. They loved the story, about a man who traveled through time trying to outrun a broken heart, only to learn that healing required staying in one moment long enough to feel it. "Mason, this is incredible." Adrian pulled me into a hug so tight I could barely breathe. "I'm so proud of you. I couldn't have done it without you. You're the one who told me to create something that mattered, remember? I just encouraged you, you did the work." We stayed on that beach until late, making plans and dreaming dreams and occasionally being quiet together in the comfortable way that comes with deep intimacy. The lighthouse kept its watch, sweeping its beam across the water every 8 seconds, constant and faithful. As we walked back to the car, Adrian said, "Can I tell you something?" "Anything." "That first night when you walked into the hotel, I had this feeling, like the universe was handing me something precious and saying, 'Don't screw this up.' And I've spent this entire year terrified that I'd say the wrong thing or push too hard or not be enough. And now I think maybe I was enough all along, and more importantly, we're enough. Together, separate, complicated, messy, we're enough. We really are." We drove home to his house where I spent most nights now, though I'd kept my apartment as a workspace and occasional retreat, and we made love with the tenderness and passion that comes from truly knowing someone. And afterward, tangled in sheets and moonlight, I thought about the hotel concierge who'd given me more than a welcome. He'd given me hope. He'd given me a reason to stop running. He'd given me the courage to rebuild my life in the city that had broken my heart, to face my past and create a future, to love again despite knowing how badly it could hurt. He'd given me himself, fully, honestly, courageously, and in doing so had taught me how to give myself in return. Epilogue 2 years later. The house took 18 months to build. We'd found land in Magnolia, a neighborhood with views of the Sound and Puget Sound and the Olympics beyond. Adrian had modified his original design a dozen times based on my input, adding a sunroom where I could work when I needed natural light, expanding the garden space, creating a small studio behind the house where he'd set up his piano and his architectural drafting table. We moved in on a sunny Saturday in April with help from Sam and Renee, Emma and her husband Mike, and a half-dozen friends we'd collected along the way. The house smelled like fresh paint and possibility, and as I stood in our kitchen, arranging flowers in a vase, I felt a sense of belonging that had eluded me for so long. My graphic novel had been published 6 months earlier to positive reviews and modest sales. I was already working on a second one, and I'd started teaching that design workshop at the community college, which I loved more than I'd expected. Adrian had been promoted to head concierge at the Emerald Grand and had started taking online courses in architecture, thinking about maybe pursuing a master's degree. We were both becoming who we were meant to be, separately and together. That evening, after everyone had left and we were alone in our new home for the first time, Adrian produced a bottle of champagne and 2 glasses. "To new beginnings," he said, pouring. "To not running away. To home. To us." We clinked glasses and drank, and then Adrian pulled me toward the window that overlooked our garden and the water beyond. The sun was setting, painting everything in shades of gold and pink, and I could see the lighthouse at Discovery Park in the distance, still keeping its faithful watch. "I love you," Adrian said, in case that wasn't clear. "It's very clear I love you too. Even when I leave my socks on the floor. Even then, though I reserve the right to complain about it." "Fair enough." We stood there as the light faded, watching our first sunset in our home, and I thought about the journey that had brought us here. All the pain and fear and uncertainty that had led to this moment of perfect contentment. All the times I'd almost given up, almost kept running, almost convinced myself I didn't deserve happiness. I thought about that rain-soaked night 2 years ago, walking into a hotel lobby exhausted and heartbroken, meeting a man who would change everything. Who would show me that coming home didn't mean going backward, that love didn't have to look like what I'd known before, that healing was possible if I was brave enough to stand still. The hotel concierge had given me more than a welcome, he'd given me a future. And I'd given him mine in return. "Hey," Adrian said softly, pulling me from my thoughts, "where'd you go?" Just remembering that first night at the hotel, how lost I was. And now, I looked around at the home we'd built together, at the life we were creating, at the man who'd been patient enough to wait while I found myself. Now I'm found. Good, because I'm planning on keeping you. Promise. Promise, for as long as you'll have me. That might be a very long time. I'm counting on it. We kissed as the last light faded from the sky, and somewhere in the distance, the lighthouse beam swept across the water, still keeping watch, still constant, still faithful after all these years. And I knew that whatever came next, whatever challenges or joys or complications life had in store, we'd face it together. I'd stopped running, I'd come home, and home, it turned out, wasn't a place at all. It was a person, it was us, it was this. And it was more than enough. The end.